Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and the Confederation of Indian Industry, I'd like to welcome each one of you to this morning's session. To begin the inaugural session, I'd like to invite Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, to give his welcome address, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and a warm welcome to this third edition of the International Conference and Exhibition on Aatmanirbhar Bharat in RE Manufacturing Pathways for Global Partnership in Green Energy, Powering India and the World. As you know, this is being held in partnership with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII. And I'd like to start, therefore, by welcoming our Honorable Minister of Power and New and Renewable Energy, Shri R.K. Singh, Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Honorable Minister. We also have with us, as you can see, Mr. Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, the Secretary in the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And again, between the Minister and the Secretary's presence over here shows the tremendous partnership that the Government of India and the Indian industry has been having in this very, very important area of our work. And one can go on in terms of the type of collaboration that one has seen and the huge leadership that one has seen in it from India and from the government, and particularly from the Honorable Minister in this important area of work. And we always thank him and laud him for the space, encouragement and partnership that he has given to the Indian industry through a series of not just interactions but also of collaboration. And today we see many, many actions, be it some of the very innovative schemes that the government has talked about in terms of enabling the sector to really move forward with speed. And one would also really like to mention the hydrogen mission of the Honorable Prime Minister, which has really set the ball rolling in many ways. And we see how even our MNRE Secretary, Sri Chaturvedi, has been working in the working group on hydrogen with a large number of industry on a very, very regular basis to give this encouragement. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a great privilege and pleasure to have with us the Minister as our chief guest, and of course the Secretary to be here participating in this important session. As you see, we have a strong presence of the international community as well as the Indian industry present over here, and on the dais represented are Dr. Praveer Sinha and Gyanesh Chaudhary, the two who would give the industry's perspective in this session and really look at how we could deepen the engagement and reach the type of targets that we have set for ourselves. I would be completely out of place if I do not mention that today's event is really happening a day prior to the 5th Assembly of the International Solar Alliance, which is going to be held in the same place, and India would host around 100 nations who will deliberate. Many of you who have come in advance are participating in this session today for that, and I see Mr. Ajay Mathur, the Director General, also with us for this session. And I would also like to really start by mentioning about someone who would have been driving this conference as not just the chair of the CII's Renewable Energy Council, but also as someone who has been extremely passionate, who has been a person who always gave that type. We saw the type of huge enthusiasm coming in him, whom we are missing very strongly today. Mr. Tulsi Tanti, the chairman of Suzlon, and the person who has actually chaired the CII's council. He was a sitting chairman of the CII's Renewable Energy Council. And we have the presence of his dear family here and even the members of the Suzlon group. And we really wanted to place on record our deepest gratitude to him for having led the Renewable Energy Council work so very strongly. And every time that he was in Delhi or we were elsewhere in meetings, including the CII's National Board, he always was full of enthusiasm and a great brand ambassador from the industry for India. Ladies and gentlemen, just like to take the opportunity of the presence of our honorable minister, our secretary, and some of the esteemed delegates who are present here. And just wanted to mention that Indian industry has been very much closely working with our government on the very, very ambitious targets that we have set for ourselves. And I just wanted to mention a couple of points from them. One, of course, ensuring a just transition. You know, at COP26, we know India declared it will achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2017, and some of our states have declared that they will not build any further thermal power station. But getting just energy transition requires a phenomenal intentional focus, if I can say, on firstly achieving the transition and alongside ensuring that it is just. And that all requires having a process that is inclusive of many, many stakeholders who will be impacted because of switching from fossil fuel driven business towards alternatives. And we have seen the commitment of the government of India to move the economy towards net zero carbon emissions, as well as the several states of India who recognize that they will indeed make this transition. We also need a series of calculations to understand the cost of transition, ensuring affordable, reliable, clean energy, electricity sources to ensure that the transition process is a net job revenue creator. Second, I just wanted to mention about financing the transition and ensuring access to technology. And without the robust long-term finance processes being put into place that can address the issues of mobilization and scaling up of climate finance, several developing nations, especially the global south, will not be able to meet the climate commitments. And while several global technology cooperation and co-development initiatives and platforms have already been initiated, and India plays a very, very important and critical role in the Clean Energy Ministerial Forum. Mission Innovation Platform is a founding member of the International Solar Alliance, as I mentioned. There are still significant issues in ensuring transfer of climate technologies, and stakeholders really need to develop, therefore, an integrated approach towards technology and climate finance, related plans and programs at the national and global levels. And in particular, the integration of technology needs assessments with other relevant national and sectoral plans and programs. Additionally, there is a need to enhance coherence between international institutions in order to reduce the complexity of processes that developing countries have to follow to requesting financing for climate technologies. Third, I just also wanted to mention about some of the initiatives that we've seen from the industry. And at CII, as the Confederation of Indian Industry, we worked on the Green Power Market Development Program, Corporate Renewable Energy Procurement Program, which has resulted in substantial RE additions, as many of our industry members are aware of. And the Green Power Market Development Program really strongly resulted in that 700 megawatt renewable energy capacity and facilitated more than 3,400 crores of investment in corporate buildings and industry. And Indian corporates indeed are very, very committed now to the process of renewable energy. Fourth, the CII's corporate renewable energy study, and that covers 350 NSE listed companies across 17 of our states, and we found that 96% of our corporate members of the 350 have clear renewable energy targets and plans. Fifth, the CII is, of course, very strongly in collaboration and the directions from our government driving the net zero movement in the country, with more than today 200 of our members who have already, as organizations, committed to it. And we have the Green Business Council, the Green Business, in fact, the building itself, which is based out of Hyderabad, has become a demonstration net zero energy building recently with 160 kilowatts of solar PV installed in it. And the green building movement, as we know in India, with more than 8 billion square feet of registered footprint, is also supporting the RE installation in the country. And India is the second largest today in terms of certified green building space in the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a great moment for us, and this is indeed an opportunity that we see for us as a country, for us at the industry, and with this huge collaboration that we see in the policy front and also in projects between the government and industry, we do see not only just the targets and plans to be in place, but we feel really so much energized today because we see India right on the top of the world's high table for discussions on renewable and renewable energy and clean climate. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and once again welcome you to this conference.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee. And now to give the industry perspective, I'd like to invite Dr. Praveer Sinha, Co-Chairman, CII National Committee on Power and CEO and Managing Director, Tata Power.
Good morning, Honorable Minister for Power, New and Renewable Energy, Shri R.K. Singh Ji, Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Mr. Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, Excellencies, senior delegates, officials from government, ladies and gentlemen, I would first of all like to compliment both Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, as also CII for arranging this event, which is a very, very important event, an annual event which got derailed during the COVID period, but I think the participation of such a large number of delegates demonstrates that the leadership of clean energy starts in India. In fact, this is a decade of India where India can really demonstrate both in thought and action that how we will convert and make 350 gigawatt of renewable energy a reality. And this is not something that will happen in one day, but I think the type of support, the type of collaboration, the type of work that is happening in India, I think we can really transform the way energy can be produced and used. But when we look at renewable energy, there are three main challenges that we have. First is renewable energy is intermittent. It's not continuous. It's not reliable. So how do we make it reliable? How do we come up with solutions? A number of solutions are being worked on, whether it is hybrid solutions of solar, wind. It is hybrid solution of solar, wind storage, which can be battery storage or any other type of thermal storage. And it can be hydrogen. It can also be hydropower plants. It can also be demand response and demand side management. So I think there is a great opportunity for us to move towards the so-called 24/7 renewable power and make it a reality. but it requires certain amount of collaboration and work between different stakeholders and different types of generating companies to see that how they can make it a reliable power. The second issue is how do we bring resilience? In power sector, we always believe in N-1, N-2. While we have renewable energy, it will have a backup of storage, it will have a backup of hydrogen, it will have a backup of hydro. But is it going to be resilient in terms of supply? There are technologies. The gas-based power plants can be a technology which can be used. Apart from that, nuclear can be a technology which can be used. India has ambitious plans to add nuclear capacity, and I think some of the work that is happening globally in making small modular design nuclear power plants will be very helpful. Also, there is a lot of work that is happening on nuclear fusion technology, not the nuclear fission, and I think again that's an area that with the collaboration and the technology interventions that can happen, we can make it resilient. The third area that I feel that we have to make renewable energy really sustainable in the long run and have a robust plan is when we make renewable energy supply chain secure. How do we bring security of supply in the components, in the raw materials that is required? The government plan through the PLI, the government plans to see that how do we also ensure total integration end-to-end from polysilicon to ingots to wafers to cell to module. But then there are large number of other technologies also which is there. The thin film technology, the peroxides technology, where you don't have to actually go the silicon route. You don't have to be dependent on few countries to supply you silicon. And I think that's an area that India can work. Similarly, when we talk of the batteries, the first name that comes in mind is the lithium-ion battery. But lithium is sourced from one country only. Do we have other chemistries? Do we have sodium sulfate batteries? Do we have liquid batteries? Do we have aluminum batteries? Do we have manganese batteries? Can we look at flow batteries? So I think there's a whole amount of work and technology interventions that need to happen so that our supply chain becomes secure. We are not dependent on one country or two countries, but create the necessary infrastructure in our country so that we produce the best technology and cost-effective technology for these to happen. The other area that I think is very important is about how do we create the necessary policy system in the country, how the regulations. We have seen in last 1 year, the government has taken phenomenal steps, whether it is in terms of the revised RPO obligation, or it is making the payments security secure. And I think the type of changes, the type of support that is coming in various areas, and these are not just utility scale renewables, it is also in terms of distributed renewables, whether it is rooftop solar or solar pumps that is happening. The PLI manufacturing to make it secure in terms of making everything in India and not only becoming self-sustainable, but also be in a position to export these products globally. So I think the way the policy support is coming, it is very good. It has a very long-term directional changes that it has suggested. There are some hiccups, which I think in the short term will get addressed, whether it is in terms of ALMM or it is in terms of BCD and some of those things. But I think together we have a great plan. And this requires huge collaboration, huge amount of work. This is a sector where we don't have a choice. This is a necessity for a country like India. This is a sector where everyone is on the same page. The government, the policy makers, the industry, the financing bodies, everyone is on the same page. And I'm 100% confident that not only we'll make or add 350 gigawatt, everyone tells me that it's a very difficult target, you don't have a plan. But I firmly believe that this is a great opportunity for India to demonstrate to the world that how we can shift if we desire to do that. And I'm sure with the support of every stakeholder in this, this will become a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. And now, our next speaker for the industry perspective is Mr. Gyanesh Chaudhary, Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Vikram Solar. Request you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Minister, Honorable Secretary, MNRE, Mr. Chaturvedi, and ladies and gentlemen, this platform was a dream platform which was driven by Tulsi Bai, and I'd like to just remember him for a second. Together with him, we had spent countless hours trying to work on various initiatives that would be driven through this platform on making India what it is today, almost a 60 gigawatt solar manufacturing, solar generating country, 170 gigawatt renewable platform. I think all of this combined goes out to say that there is so much that India is at the cusp of achieving and is going to achieve. As we gather here today to further global partnerships and take concerted steps to develop green economy, it is imperative to take this vision of New India envisioned by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. The aim is to make the country and its citizens independent and self-reliant in all the senses. Let me today congratulate by starting with the Government of India and MNRE on the commendable work it has done by promoting domestic manufacturing in sync with the Honorable Prime Minister's Aatmanirbhar Bharat and the Make in India vision. As stakeholders in the green energy revolution of India, we recognize and appreciate the steps taken. Our government has taken significant steps in sustainability goals and establishing the nation as a thought leader and action towards climate change. India's Panchamrit concoction, the combat of climate change offered by our Honorable Prime Minister, puts forth a resilient and clear direction for India to transition to a low-carbon economy, where the RE sector and the solar manufacturers are relentlessly working towards enabling this. Today, at the foremost priority of global economies is to be energy self-reliant. The world is looking at India today in playing a larger role in the global supply chain. The time is now to seize the opportunity. I firmly believe that in a matter of few years, every third solar panel made in the world is going to come from India. I am confident that if we continue on this path of accelerated policy reforms and to build a robust and resilient domestic solar ecosystem, we will emerge as a superpower in RE manufacturing. One clear lesson from the global energy crisis precipitated by the war at hand is that transition away from geopolitical concentrated fossil fuel resources is more equitable, distributed, renewable sources is much required. This may lead to a more stable global energy market. To achieve India's development goals, transition to clean energy-based economy is crucial. Recognizing this, India has been working strategically towards this transition in several ways that could further be strengthened by RE manufacturing. India will need a $223 billion worth of investment to meet this goal of wind and solar capacity installation by 2030. Government of India is consistently taking actions towards policy reforms, bringing foreign investments and initiatives to promote domestic manufacturing. In the last decade, we have seen a lot of these initiatives being taken. Aatmanirbhar Bharat can bring immense change. The investment flow could add 160 billion US dollars by 2024 to trade earnings. We all know about the China Plus One strategy that the global supply chain is adopting. This can draw investments of close to 5 billion in solar. Industrial growth initiatives under the Aatmanirbhar Bharat expected to grow industrial sector by 11.8%. The MSME sector will boost domestic manufacturing by creating jobs. 7.51 million jobs were already created, and 5 to 6 million jobs can further be created. Government of India has aggressively promoted green transition. From 10 megawatt in 2010 to 59 gigawatt, as I said, in 2022, the pace of solar adoption has been significant. The recent Honorable Prime Minister inaugurating the first 24/7 solar-powered village in Gujarat reiterates the government's commitment to this cause. To enable the target of 280 gigawatt by 2030, India has to install around 25 to 30 gigawatt or to install of solar energy capacity in the next 8 years. To meet this deficit and to build a manufacturing hub, the Government of India must consistently bring reform in policy and enforce implementation. Some of the key support that we have received in the last few years, the PLI second tranche, which is currently under execution, the ALMM, which is the approved list of manufacturers, which prevents dumping of non-Indian products, the basic custom duty implementation, which promotes domestic manufacturing, mandate on states to buy 25% RE power in the draft electricity bill in 21. Doing away with reverse auction for renewable energy projects would really help in this cause. The revamp of the distribution scheme will further attempt to support financially the DISCOMs. The National Solar Rooftop Portal, we have seen as an industry, has added significantly to this penetration of distributed solar in India. I strongly believe that the solar energy is a priority and Aatmanirbhar Bharat is a success. The Central Electricity Authority forecasts that the country's reliance on coal to drop from 53% of installed capacity in 21 to 33% by 2030. This is, as we can see, is becoming a global phenomenon where coal prices are going up, and globally we see that there are reduction in coal consumption and overall penetration of renewable energy. India has the resource, technology, leadership, and skill to become the leader in solar manufacturing. The outlook for the sector, both India and global markets, on the back of government's policy push is called climate action. And the carbon neutrality goals, coupled with China Plus One policy, will offer immense opportunity for indigenous solar manufacturing. Corporate commitments from companies could help achieve 86 to 90% of this goal by 2030. Industries like steel, cement, transport, petrochem, oil refineries, and fertilizers are intensive and account for 25% for total CO2 emission in the world. To scale this height, we need flexible financial solutions, imposition of price variation in the solar tenders, and there is a host of other R&D support and other things. I would like to thank CII for this great initiative and further this cause with all the support from the industry and from Vikram Solar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure to invite Mr. Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, Secretary, Ministry of Renewable and New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, to give us his special address, please.
Honorable Union Cabinet Minister for Power and Renewable Energy, Shri R.K. Singh, Director General ISA, Shri Ajay Mathur, Director General CII, Shri Chandrit Banerjee, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. So let me begin with a personal tribute to Shri Tulsi Tanti, whose presence we miss here today. Mr. Tanti, as we all know, was a pioneer in renewable energy. He was a luminary, and particularly in wind energy, he established the wind industry in India. It would not be wrong to say that. And I remember when I joined this assignment, he was responsible for a large part of what I came to know about wind energy particularly. He was a fierce advocate and a nationalist, and we'll continue missing his presence for a long, long time. So coming to the topic for today's conference, now Aatmanirbharta has various connotations, and I think it would not be wrong to say that Aatmanirbharta in the widest possible connotation means Aatmanirbharta in energy, which covers everything. Aatmanirbharta in equipment, RE equipment, Aatmanirbharta in energy production, consumption, etc., etc. Now, it's not possible to be completely self-reliant in anything. So that's the caveat here. You can be self-reliant, but there's some things which you have to be dependent on, for which you will have to depend on other countries. So given that caveat, I think the target has been set for us by 2047. We have to be independent in energy. We have to reach a point of energy independence. So within this large framework, I'll just mention two areas where we have been trying to be Aatmanirbhar, and where I think we will be able to be Aatmanirbhar. So the first is solar manufacturing. Now, at present, 80% of the world's solar equipment comes from a single country. That country has invested 10 times more in the solar industry than the European Union since 2011. And if we look at the global requirements, an IEA report says that while the 2021 installations were 151 gigawatt, they would quadruple to 630 gigawatt by 2030 if the roadmap to net zero by 2030 has to be achieved. Now, this 630 figure might be exaggerated, but the point is that solar equipment will be required in very large quantities in the years to come. And the figures speak for themselves. The world cannot continue relying on one country, and therefore, being Aatmanirbhar is not only good for India in this area, it's also good for the world. And that, I think, is the theme for today's conference, Pathways for Global Partnership. So this is an area where India's Aatmanirbharta is good for the global energy transition. So let me now come to what we expect to achieve in this area in the coming time, in the next, say, 3 years. Our module capacities, which have been enlisted in ALMM, have more than doubled in the last say 1.5 years. They are now 20 gigawatt. The same cannot be said about cells. They have reached only 4.5 gigawatt. But in the coming time, I think if you consider PLI 1 into PLI 1, and then if you consider PLI 2, for which the bid is about to be issued, and we are confident that it will be issued within a week. The scheme guidelines have already been published. So if you look at these two PLI dispensations, the result by 2026, we are looking at capacities of 38 gigawatt in polysilicon, 56 gigawatt in ingot and wafers, 70 to 80 gigawatt in cells, and 90 to 100 gigawatt in modules. Our targets are huge. We require, if you consider 500 gigawatt, which does not take into account the hydrogen plans we have, then we have to install about 25 to 30 or 30 to 35 gigawatt every year. So the capacities we are planning to install, or the country is likely to see, will not only cater to this, it will also be able to cater hopefully to the hydrogen demand, and there will be something remaining for exports. So the outlook for solar manufacturing seems good. Now, as Mr. Praveer Sinha said, there might be a hiccup there, that is understandable, because as I have said earlier, if you intervene in the market, there are bound to be wrinkles in the short run, and some of the supply-demand tension we see in solar modules can be attributed to this, and I think a large part can be attributed to the rise in global prices. So this is the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing is the hydrogen mission, and this is essential for energy independence, because there are some areas of the economy, some areas of industry.
The developed world accounts for 85% of the global legacy carbon CO2 load. But we believe in energy transition because we believe that environment needs to be safe. And the actions which we have been taking speak for themselves. We don't need to actually advertise it, they speak for themselves. I mean, whatever we had pledged in our NDCs, we have more than achieved. And we achieved them 9 years in advance. We had pledged that 40% will come from non-fossils by 2030. We've already achieved that in 2021. Now, as of now, 42% of our capacity is non-fossil. And as one colleague said, that by 2030, my capacity from non-fossils would be in the region of about 65%. In fact, 65% is an underestimate, as I'll tell you right now. My established capacity today is 170 odd gigawatts of non-fossils. I have another about 80 gigawatts under construction. Now that makes it 250 gigawatts. We have pledged 50% by 2030. In fact, we'll, as I said, reach not 65%, we'll reach more than that. As far as our reduction of emissions intensity is concerned, we had pledged that we'll reduce it by 33% by 2030. We are already at around 30%, in fact 31%. And so we have upped our ambition that by 2030, we'll reduce our emissions intensity by 45%. Our push towards energy transition continues, and it will continue. It has met hurdles. The hurdles, one major hurdle has been the supply chain. We had a fledgling industry for solar cells and modules manufacturing. That started suffering because of dumping by some countries. So we had to put a safeguard duty. Thereafter, we replaced that safeguard duty with a customs duty, and we started encouraging manufacturing here. Now that has taken off. And by 2030, we shall have 90 gigawatts plus of manufacturing, right from polysilicon up to the module stage. We already have about 20 gigawatts listed in our ALM, but the capacity under construction would also be around about 15 to 20 gigawatts is already under construction. And you have a further 40 gigawatts which is going to come in the second PLI, 8.5 gigawatts already come under the first PLI. By 2030, I expect about 90 plus gigawatts. So we would have taken a decisive step towards diversifying the supply chain. Now this is going to be high efficiency, the cells and modules. We have no place for low efficiency cells and modules. So those who are making low efficiency cells and modules, try and transition very quickly to high efficiency, because low efficiency cells and modules we are going to rule out. We'll give you a window, we'll give you a trajectory so that you have time to replace it with high efficiency cells and modules. And the PLI will also emphasize high efficiency cells and modules. And we don't have any place in our country for anything except the the highest efficiency cells and modules, the most modern technology. So that is the policy direction which we will be indicating in the PLI which comes, and that is the policy direction which we'll be indicating even otherwise in our ALM and other policy instruments, that it has to be high efficiency, so that the price of energy comes down further as the technology advances. And we aim to emerge as an alternate supply chain. Now, in order to emerge as an alternate supply chain, it is absolutely imperative that we have technology which is the latest cutting edge. So that is what it will be insofar as polysilicon to solar cells and modules manufacturing is concerned. As far as polysilicon is concerned, it is energy intensive. So we have been thinking of ways and means of making sure that your power costs come down. And we have thought up of ways and means. One of the ways which we can do that is to give you a deemed distribution license. So we've already come out with a set of rules which says that you don't have to give and pay any additional surcharge, and that your transmission charges will be waived. That policy is already out. In addition, we are also going to, if you set up, you can set up your own captive. Again, you will get a free transmission, and you don't have to pay any surcharge or additional surcharge, so that your power costs come down. And we are also considering giving you a deemed distribution license. So any other charges will also get taken care of. So and then you can set up your own renewable energy manufacturing capacity anywhere you want and get it get it for your polysilicon manufacturing. The same will apply also to green hydrogen. Now, why I said that this 66%, 65% target which we have is something which we shall overachieve is because I'm confident that the quantum of green hydrogen manufacturing which we are going to set up is going to be huge. Just the first meeting, I had asked the industry to indicate how much they will be setting up capacity for green hydrogen. I got a figure of 25 million tons, and there are 3-4 major industries we had not indicated that. So it won't be 25 million tons, it will be at least 35 or 40 million tons of green hydrogen, and every million ton of green hydrogen requires 25 gigawatts of renewable energy. Every million. So the 25 multiplied by 40 is how much? That itself, I think, is about 1,000 gigawatts. So as far as my targets are concerned, my targets are the least of my worries. The energy transition will happen, ladies and gentlemen. It will happen at a faster pace than anybody has had thought about or is thinking about. It's already at a pace which is faster than anybody had thought about. Nobody thought that we could do it this fast. And it is going to be faster than you think about, you think right now. It is going to be much faster. We are fortunate. One of the reasons is that, our demand is increasing rapidly. My demand has been increasing at the rate of 11% for the past about 5-6 months. And I expect that rate of growth of demand to continue because my economy is growing. And my economy will continue to grow at about 7-8%, 9%. Take it. If it does not accelerate, hopefully it should accelerate to double digits. So there is space, and we are determined that we shall transition. We are already a world leader in transition. We are the only major economy whose energy transition actions are consonant with a sub-2 degree rise in global temperature. Now, the different surveys had, international surveys had sort of noted this, and they had said that India is the only major economy whose energy transition actions are consonant with the sub-2 degree rise in global temperature. But then what happened was, what happens often, when you have this hypocrisy around. So they felt that now this doesn't look nice at all. So this puts everybody else in a bad light. So they revised it, and then they said that we'll take into account the pledges which are made. That means those who promise to do better in the future will also get ranked higher. I have never seen such balderdash. So I told my ministry that let's write to them and tell them that we hereby sort of stop having any faith in you. You see, hypocrisy doesn't work. That is something which you must realize. Hypocrisy doesn't work. And it gets exposed. It gets exposed promptly. And there are numerous instances of hypocrisy. Now, that brings me to something which, again, is a global question. Now, is the world, especially the developed world, is it serious about energy transition? We are, as I said, and we shall do it. And we are proving that we are doing it. But is the developed world serious about it? That is the question. And that is the question which the developing countries, members of the International Solar Alliance also have. I mean, you had a disruption in gas supplies, you switch to coal, you're switching to coal. And you want more gas, right? Now, I have come up with I see another phenomenon. And I have received, proposals from countries, developed countries, for signing agreements on decarbonized hydrogen. Now, what is that? Have you moving away from green hydrogen to decarbonized hydrogen? Now, what is decarbonized hydrogen? Decarbonized hydrogen is hydrogen if made from natural gas. You take away the CO2. That is decarbonized hydrogen. Now, why do you want to stick with natural gas? Tell me that. Because you take away CO2, where do you store it? What do you do? I mean, if you think that you can store it in the wells which you dug to take out oil, possible, but it might leak. It might contaminate your water sources. It might sort of burst out. It will still be a threat to the world, just like nuclear waste is. So why decarbonized hydrogen? I mean, before this there was a theory that actually gas is not very polluting. Just imagine that. It has methane, by the way, which is also one of the most, the elements most responsible for global warming. And it has CO2, you burn it, it has CO2. So various theories are trotted out to try and avoid this commitment to decarbonize, to go to green. Now that is not something which will work. That is not something which will work. So you need to think about that. And this whole incident of the gas crisis also brings to fore something which is very critical and which I will sort of place before you from the point of view of the developing member countries, members of the International Solar Alliance. And that is that most of the developing countries, in the African continent, etc., there is a problem of access to energy. That's the problem. Now, for them, energy access, even if it is from coal or gas, is more important than actually getting it from renewable energy. Of course, if you get it from renewable energy, then during daytime or when the wind blows, it will be cheaper. That is the advantage. But without storage, it can't be 24/7. And storage is expensive. We recently finalized a bid for 1,000 megawatt hours of storage, one of the biggest bids in the world. And the rate which we got was 10 rupees per unit, per kilowatt hour, for storage only. Whereas my renewable energy cost is just 2 rupees 30 paise, 2 rupees 40 paise. So 2 rupees 30 paise, which is about $3 for generating energy, and 10 rupees, which is about $12 for storing it for 1 hour. So that is the storage cost. So the storage costs have to come down. Now that again we are going to bring down. We are going to come out with, right now again most of the storage capacity is concentrated, guess where? One country. Again we need to diversify our supply chain. Again. So we are going to do it. We are going to come out with a PLI for manufacturing of grid scale storage. We came out with a PLI for manufacturing of storage for mobility, but that was for mobility. We need storage on a grid scale, large grid scale. So we'll come out with a PLI for that. We are also trying, guess which country has tied up 89% of the current mining capacity in lithium? One country. 89%. It moves fast. It moves fast. So we are trying to tie up some sources as well. But we need to move away from lithium. We need alternate chemistries. So that's a problem for the world. And we need to work on that. We need to develop alternate chemistry. So let's work on that. People are working on that. If that happens, we'll have a diversified supply chain. There's another thing, this is pumped hydro. So we surveyed all the sites of pumped hydro which are there in our country, and we are going to exploit each and every site. Pumped hydro is something which will be cheaper than battery. It will last 30 years, 50 years, 40, 50 years, whereas a battery you will have to phase out in 10 years time max. You can reprocess the lithium, but expensive. So basically pumped hydro will exploit each and every thing. We are going to come out with a policy for pumped hydro. And so all of you should also get ready to invest in pumped hydro. We are creating a space whereby independent storage comes up as an entity in our system. So you can own storage, whether it is battery storage or pumped hydro, and you can sell space or rent out space or hire out space. So states which have surplus renewable energy during daytime when the sun shines or during the windy hours, they can bank it or store it with you for that after paying that storage charge, and thereafter use that energy at night when it is when sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. So that is another element which is going to come up in our power system. And of course, by and large, going forward, I mean, we are going to keep on encouraging storage. We came out with a bid, we'll come out with other bids. Our attempt is that we by adding volumes, we will bring the price of storage, because as I said, we want to transition. The cost of transition will bear, I mean, basically we are bearing, we shall bear. But we want to transition. And for transitioning, you need storage, because without storage, you don't have 24/7 dispatchable energy. If you don't have 24/7 dispatchable energy, you don't have transition. Now, that is another question which the world has to answer, the cost of storage. Because without that, you don't have a base load. You can say that I'll have nuclear as a base load. I mean, that's, as I said, as the pie in the sky. You're adding that much of nuclear capacity, where will you store the waste? And who can add nuclear capacity? Tell me that. Can the developing countries add that? No. No. Nobody will go and invest there. Nobody will go and set up a nuclear power plant there. So that leaves out, when we 70%, 80% of the world. So that is no answer. That cannot be an answer. The answer has to lie in cheaper storage. And we have to, if we are really serious about, greening the planet, we have to address this. We have to address the problem of storage. Otherwise, we will not be able to green the planet. And, there has to be a determination. You will have to decide, and you will have to say that, yes, I will go green without, relying on carbon credits. Because if you rely on carbon credits, you are actually only spending money. You are not going green. You are still emitting CO2. And you think that somebody else will compensate you for it. That's not the best way. Carbon credits are not the best way. Carbon credits means that somebody does, abates emissions, and you take advantage continued emissions. That is not the best way of going green, not carbon credits. And waiting, thinking that I will do something, something will happen. In the meantime, let me continue as we are continuing with the same huge per capita emissions. That again will not work. That again will not work. The world needs to see, the bigger emitters, those who emit 3 times to 5 times the world average. The world needs to see those bigger emitters taking steps, concrete steps to bring down those emissions. And we want to understand those steps. Now, of late, we've received proposals from some countries about getting into a partnership for just energy transition. And in that partnership, they will discuss, what India is doing for energy transition. So I said, sorry, no. I mean, a partnership means equality. And we get into agreements, we only get into agreements which are equal. So if we want to discuss energy transition, let's discuss both our energy transition. I'll tell you what I am doing for abating emissions. And you tell me what you are doing. My emissions are 1/3 the world average. Your emissions are 3 times the world average. So, I mean, what you are doing is also important. So, if we sit down, we'll discuss both our actions, what you are doing and what we are doing. That is the construct. So, I mean, basically, hypocrisy will not work. It doesn't work. And we have to decide whether we are really serious about energy transition. We are, and we shall be. But let me tell you about the developing world. As far as the developing world is concerned, they are, concerned about access to energy, just like you are. And just like you are worried about what will happen in the winter, think about the poor people. What will happen in the winter? Think about that. They are concerned about access. For them, access is more important than transition. We can make both happen. We can make both happen. Both access and transition can happen. In fact, it can be a green access, provided the funds which are promised are delivered. Now, you don't have to actually finance every project in Africa, no. We've come out with a mechanism whereby we will set up an insurance fund and we'll set up a payment security fund. The International Solar Alliance will set it up. Now, once you provide payment security and once you provide insurance, then private investment will come. And let me tell you this, that as far as investments are concerned, only about 20% max, 20% of the investment will go bad. And that will be covered by the payment security mechanism and the insurance mechanism. But then you have a gain of 80%. And it's only private investment which will do it. I mean, governments can't be expected to go and set up capacities. We didn't do it that way. All our capacities have been set up. I mean, 170 odd gigawatts have been set up through private investment. We haven't invested any money. If we don't invest any money in transmission either, we hold bids and people come and bid. I mean, we are in the happy situation that investments are rolling in. Every bid of ours is hotly contested. So we are in that happy situation. But we need to create that situation for countries in Africa where access is wanting. So we need the developed countries to contribute to the payment security fund, payment guarantee fund, which is being set up by the International Solar Alliance. And we need the developed countries to contribute to the insurance fund, which is being set up. And then you will have both. You will have access being provided to people who need it in the developing countries, and you will have that access being provided by green energy. And in the meantime, as I said, the diversifying our supply chains are absolutely essential. For us, it's a question of diversifying, absolutely, as a measure of energy security, because we faced it. As I said, we faced dumping. We are not going to face any dumping. So when we come with green hydrogen, we'll have a PLI for electrolyzers, and we'll also have a PLI for manufacturing green hydrogen. But I think that PLI for manufacturing green hydrogen will only be required for the initial capacities, maybe initial 4 million tons or 5 million tons. Thereafter, it will compete. The green hydrogen will stand on its own feet. And let's stop talking about decarbonized hydrogen. It's, even if you decarbonize, the carbon dioxide is still there. It's still there. So forget about it. I mean, it doesn't work. So that proposals which have come for partnership in decarbonized hydrogen, I'm cutting out the word decarbonized and writing green hydrogen. We can have partnership with green hydrogen. Only that is something which will actually save the climate. So these were our perspectives as I see it. Basically, we believe that energy transition is something which is good for the world. It will bring down the price of energy. And of course, it is something which will make sure that our weather patterns are healed. Right now, all our weather patterns are going helter-skelter. And it will make sure that our planet lasts for maybe 4 or 5 more centuries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd now like to invite Mr. Gautam Reddy Kumbam, Chief Operating Officer, Greenco Group, to give the vote of thanks, please.
Very good morning to everyone. Shri R.K. Singh ji, Honorable Minister, Power and MNRE, Shri Indu Shekhar ji, Secretary, MNRE, Shri Chandrajit Banerjee ji, Director CII, Dr. Praveer Sinha ji, Co-Chairman CII, Shri Chaudhary ji, gathered dignitaries, industry representatives and dear friends. On the occasion of the inauguration of the 3rd International Conference and Exhibition on Pathways for Global Partnership in Green Energy, I would like to thank the Honorable Minister for his gracious presence on behalf of CII and the Greenco Group. In his illuminating address, the Honorable Minister has outlined various policy aspects with regards to green energy generation in India, notably the around 20,000 crore PLI scheme to boost domestic manufacturing of high-efficiency PV modules. The CII theme for this year is Beyond India at 75. Competitiveness, growth, sustainability, internationalism, all these aptly cover the important areas that are being deliberated in the next 2 days. After the call to action by Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji at RE Invest 2015, India successfully added 67 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity till August 2022. While achieving this, we are not only meeting but exceeding our commitments on sustainability development goals and our NDCs. I'm confident that we will also achieve Honorable Minister's target of 500 gigawatts of RE installed capacity by 2030, and India will soon be a net energy exporter. As we pay our respects to Mr. Tulsi Tanti ji, a pioneer in India in the field of wind energy, we are reminded of his vision of coming together to achieving net zero emissions by 2070. The National Hydrogen Mission of the Government of India is paving the way for the emerging green molecule sector that will transform India into a global production and export hub for green hydrogen and its derivatives, leading India towards achieving energy independence and industrial scale decarbonization. In the spirit of the encouragement provided by the government, at Greenco, we are developing 50 gigawatt hours of IRESPs by 2025, going up to 100 gigawatts by the end of the decade through deployment of off-stream pumped hydro storage referred to by Honorable Minister. These completely use the skills and materials from within the country, a reflection of Aatmanirbhar Bharat. Climate change is upon us, and we have been working on various new age disruptive solutions across energy storage, green hydrogen, and molecules to accelerate the energy transition. We have established partnerships with global players like Enrich, General Electric, John Cockerell, Technip, and others to work together and develop energy solutions in India, but for the globe. I would like to end by reiterating that carbon-free energy can be firm, flexible, and dispatchable, and is imperative. Thank you all for being here to deliberate on this very important aspect of powering India and the world. I'm sure that this third edition of the conference will see some of the best deliberations and ideas being brought forward for powering India and the world. I would once again like to thank Honorable Ministers and all the dignitaries for their attendance and wish the conference a great success. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now pay a tribute. Ladies and gentlemen, with that we come to the end of the inaugural session, and now we will pay a tribute to the late Shri Tulsi Tanti, Chairman CI Renewable Energy Council and Chairman and Managing Director Suzlon Group, who passed away and left for his heavenly abode on the 1st of October very suddenly this year. We have put together a video, and I'd like you all to watch that. Can we have the video, please? I'd now like to invite Mr. Girish Tanti, Vice Chairman Suzlon Group, brother of late Shri Tulsi Tanti, to please join us on the stage. May I request all of you to please rise and observe a minute of silence in his honor, please. Thank you. Please sit down. I'd like to invite Mr. Girish Tanti to say a few words on this occasion.
Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Shri R.K. Singh Sahab, Minister for Power and New and Renewable Energy, Shri Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi ji, Secretary MNRE, and Shri Chandrajit Banerjee ji, Director General CII, and my industry colleagues. Please accept my heartfelt gratitude for the touching tribute and the kind words that all the members on the panel have shared today towards Tulsibai. It is a profound moment of grief and yet immense hope, because today I am convinced that we are not alone in this loss and in our commitment to work towards the vision that Tulsibai set out to. Shri Tulsi Tanti is a name synonymous in wind energy, and over the years it has become synonymous with renewable energy, not just in our country but globally. Many of us in this room have had the opportunity to work with him and learn from him in this regards. All of you have been valuable part of his journey and have contributed towards his vision. Shri Tulsibai was immensely committed to Government of India's vision on sustainable and Aatmanirbhar Bharat. He was a huge promoter of our Honorable Prime Minister's Panchamrit goal and a big supporter of the policy efforts being made by MNRE to realize these goals. He was a passionate warrior against climate change and a great believer of the power of institutes like CII as an industry body that effects change in our country. He truly believed that if the industry came together and collectively aligned their goals to the national goals, nothing was impossible.
Infrastructure and finance, and challenges and opportunities in offshore wind. Without any further ado, let me invite the eminent panelists on stage, and please help me welcome them with a big round of applause. Let's welcome Mr. Parag Sharma, Co-Chairman CII Renewable Energy Council and Founder and Chief Executive Officer O2 Power, to kindly grace the dais. Let's welcome him on stage with a big round of applause. Welcome, sir. May I invite for the industry perspective, our eminent speakers, Dr. PKC Bose, Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Enercon Wind Energy Private Limited. May I invite you, sir, to kindly join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome him. Welcome, sir. Again, for the industry perspective, may I please invite Mr. Sandy Khera, Country Manager and Chief Executive Officer, Enel Green Power. And for international perspective, I'd like to invite Ms. Nina Fenton, Head of Regional Representation, South Asia, European Investment Bank. Let's welcome the lady with a big round of applause, please. May I invite Mr. Oval Concepcion Diaz, Head of Renewable Energy Department, National Electrical Union, Cuba. Please welcome him, ladies and gentlemen, on stage with a big round of applause. And for a special address, may I invite on stage Mr. Dinesh Dayanand Jagdale. Mr. Dinesh Dayanand Jagdale, there he is. Let's welcome him on stage. Welcome, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dinesh Dayanand Jagdale is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Very warm welcome to you once again, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to get the house in order, and therefore I'd request and invite all of you to please take your seats, and then we can begin. May I invite all of you to please be seated. And once again, a polite reminder to all of you to please keep your mobile phones on silent. Thank you very much. With that, let us begin with the opening remarks now, and I'm going to request Mr. Parag Sharma, Co-Chairman, CII Renewable Energy Council and Founder and Chief Executive Officer, O2 Power, to please render the opening remarks, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on offshore wind. As most of you might be knowing, this is an area where Indian government has been working very hard. It was way back in 2015 when we came out with the offshore wind policy. And since then, multiple steps have been taken by Government of India. There was an entity called FOWIND which was formed. This was a 4-year program to help and grow Indian offshore wind industry. Then later on, we also saw an expression of interest for around 1 gigawatt on the coast of Gujarat. And the latest development in the sequence of event is a strategy paper on offshore wind. This paper was released in July this year, and it talks about in detail about the different models in which offshore wind will be developed in India. Primarily, it talks about 3 models. In one of the model, it is a 1 gigawatt. In fact, the whole scheme is of 37 gigawatt. 1 gigawatt will be developed on the coast of Gujarat under Model 1. This is a project where a lot of studies have already been carried out. The LIDAR is installed for almost 2 years. Government has a lot of data. So that is one model where, with the help of VGF, government will try achieving a lower tariff. And then it also talks about 2 more models. Model 2 is the one where most of the capacity is planned to be commissioned, which is of around 24 gigawatt. In this model, again, it has 2 parts. So without going into detail, and then we have Model 3, where it is more of a seabed-based bidding on the leasing rent, and which is a model which is very similar to what has been followed in US. So it's a well thought of paper. It talks about certain timelines in which activities will happen. Now, few of the concerns that we as an industry have is that we have already started slipping on the timelines mentioned in the strategy paper. We were expecting the first 4 gigawatt tender documents to be out in September. And now we expect in December the 1 gigawatt Gujarat tender to be out. It also talks about that India's first offshore wind farm should be commissioned in 2026. And we would look forward in this session to listen from the government side also, where are we on these timelines. Broadly speaking, we all know that for the energy security of India, offshore wind is very important. The whole industry is aggressively waiting for these tenders. In fact, last time when government called for a tender, there were 23 participants for expression of interest. And similar kind of zeal is there among IPPs and international developers to participate in this tender. The moot question which is there in everyone's mind is that India always looked for a very low aggressive tariff. You know, most of you might be knowing an entity, SECI in India. They have been struggling to sell a less than 3 rupees tariff from the last 6 months. So here we are talking about a much higher tariff. So it needs VGF support. It needs a transition support from Government of India. The way we see the strategy paper, it shows the way in which most of the capacity addition is happening on the basis of responsibility of offtake lies with the developer, which is the Model 3. Out of the entire 37 gigawatt, 24 gigawatt falls into the Model 3. Though the good thing is that the best sites have been allocated to Model 3, but still it needs to be seen whether without any VGF support, can any industry be really able to sell this power? As industry representative, our request has always been that we should go for, at least for the first few projects, where we see the tariff coming down to a level of 3 rupees with the help of minimum VGF. And that could have happened only when the best allocated sites would have been bid out along with a combination of VGF. So we will definitely love to hear from MNRE at the end of the session on what are their thoughts about it. Secondly, we would love to also discuss in this session whether in low wind speed areas where India really falls, whether there is any new technology development on turbine side which are more suitable to this. So there are multiple issues, and we will again summarize at the end of the session. There is an India industry perspective where there are speakers speaking, and there is an international perspective which we will love to hear from. And then at the end, we will wait for Mr. Jagdale, JS MNRE's comments on this topic. With this, we start with the next speaker. Thanks a lot.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, to render the industry perspective, I'm going to invite Dr. P.K.C. Bose, Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Enercom Wind Energy. Please help me welcome him with a big round of applause to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Though the Enercon, my company, we don't produce the offshore wind turbines. Since I have some great interest, and also India is exciting as far as the global manufacturing is concerned, so I would like to put across few of the concerns, challenges, and also, of course, opportunities. So let me put it across the perspective of the concerns and challenges. I think that is more important. So Mr. Jagdale can also, before he leaves, he can also give some suggestions and advices that how to overcome that. Now, when we talk about, now we are producing 4.2 megawatt and 6 megawatt onshore turbines. And here itself we have a lot of challenges, though we decided that India will be our global export hub, which means we produce everything in India and export to the global market. Now, when we look at the offshore turbines or even the onshore turbine of 6 megawatt, the challenge is the availability of raw material, number one, and the rising prices of the raw materials. So these two things are really a major concern. Now, for example, the glass fiber, India has only one glass fiber manufacturer. So there are no strong initiative. When we are talking about the onshore, plus if we take the 500 gigawatt by 2030, out of that nearly 140 gigawatt of wind energy, the raw material availability in India is a very, very major concern, the glass fiber, for example. The same as the rising prices of the resins, all the raw materials. So I think the government should take some kind of an initiative to bring a special zone or a special program in order to get a lot of glass fiber manufacturers to the country. Now, when we take the case of the offshore wind turbines, these are mainly, again, a hybrid material, which is a combination of glass and carbon. This is what is being used for building the blades, to make it lightweight. Because imagine that a 10 megawatt or a 12 megawatt turbine, it is very heavy to build with a glass alone. So you have to depend on carbon. And India don't produce carbon fiber at all. So one side we have a great ambition in place, an aggressive plan in place. But the other side, these are the challenges where our raw material availability is a huge concern. The spark gap for the wind blade, which itself is now everything we import. We don't manufacture anything here because nothing is available in our country. So it is my humble request to the ministry and also the respective authorities that we should also create a sustainability raw material availability fund to create, that is the infrastructure fund. Then it makes much more easier for the wind turbine manufacturers to look at India as a global hub for manufacturing. So the same as the logistic and supply chain, this is one of the major challenges. Many of our ports cannot handle these large wind blades or the generators. So how do we, to the best of my knowledge, the only port which can handle a 6 megawatt wind turbine blade, which is about close to 90 meters, is the Krishnapatnam port in the south of India in Andhra Pradesh. No other port can handle this. So how do we really make our infrastructure stronger in order to meet, one side we have a huge demand, the other side we have a real challenge on infrastructure side. The same as the logistic within India to how do we really transport a large offshore turbine. So these are the challenges I think we need to really address before we say that we have an aggressive plan. How do we make these aggressive plans to a reality when we are lacking on the real challenges in terms of infrastructure, raw material availability, and cost factors. So when we started our manufacturing in India, we still have a huge dream to make even our bigger turbines, 7.5 megawatt turbines to build in India. But then the challenge is that how do we really manage the logistics, supply chain, and availability of the raw material? I think this is one point from the industry perspective I would like to bring it to the attention. Since I have only 7 minutes available, so I had to stop here, and then the next speaker can give more perspective on the industry front. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, for the international perspective, let me first invite Ms. Nina Fenton, Head of Regional Representation, South Asia, European Investment Bank. Ms. Fenton.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here today, and esteemed guests and delegates. So just in case there's anyone who doesn't know us, the European Investment Bank, we are the financing arm, the bank of the European Union. So we exist to support EU objectives, and really top of the list for us is climate action. And really I think it's the ambition and vision of commitment that India has shown in the past few years that has really led us to ramp up our engagement with India. We've committed over 4 billion in the past few years and almost solely focused on climate action. Both we've supported 6 metro rail projects, but also we've worked a lot on renewables with state banks and government agencies. I see at least one of our partners in the room here. 4 billion, of course, to us, it's a big amount of money, but compared with the level of ambition that India has and the needs, the demand in the market, of course, it's a drop in the ocean. And I think offshore wind for us would be a very exciting area where I think we would be keen to ramp up our engagement. Because of course EIB has a lot of experience in this sector inside the EU. We were really, together with our Danish partners, cornerstone investors in building the industry in Europe, and also in financing the rollout. So it was really during the time of the financial crisis that we were providing finance for rolling out these technologies across northeastern Europe. And I think it did play an important role, at a time when, like today, interest rates were relatively high, in making sure that the projects got off the ground, and that's what was able to sort of reduce the costs and allow offshore wind to be rolled out, deployed across Europe. And we see a lot of the same potential for India. I think it's a very attractive sector. But of course, some of the challenges have been mentioned. So I just wanted to mention a few things. I don't want to talk about challenges, but opportunities to unlock really the opportunity to get this off the ground. So firstly, I'm a financier. I'm not a technical expert in energy, and the first thing I want to say is that we're very comfortable working with the government here in India, right? So we've partnered with the government on the metros, on renewable energy. We're very pleased with that partnership, and we want to do more there. But of course, we all understand that to really unleash the potential of offshore wind, as with other renewables, we're going to need to bring in the private sector. And how are we going to do that? On our side, there's some homework to do, frankly. We need to start getting comfortable with risk. We need to start taking potentially more risk. We need to work with our colleagues at the European Union, the European Commission, to be able to do that. We need to engage earlier and with our own financial advisory teams, right? So that we're able to structure the products we're providing for the industry correctly. And that's what we've done in the EU. We've provided corporate financing, project financing, even sort of project bonds, equity funds, in order to provide, for the different projects at the different stages, what's really needed. But of course, that can only go part of the way. And I think, some of the colleagues here have already talked about some of the issues, some of the things that need to be resolved to make the projects bankable in the first place. And, a lot can be done. We've talked about fiscal incentives, potentially guarantees, to start at the very beginning, helping for developers and investors to start dipping their toes in until the costs come down and it becomes something that's fully commercial. But I think even more important is kind of the certainty. Investors need to be comfortable. They need to be able to trust the regulatory framework. And personally, I've seen what's happened in solar in India, so I'm quite optimistic that this can be achieved for wind, but obviously there's a way to go. Secondly, on the technological front, of course, I'm not a technical expert myself, but some of the challenges were mentioned, the relatively low wind speeds. At EIB, we've been quite involved looking at innovative solutions for offshore floating. Because one of the problems we were dealing with was there are actually higher wind speeds there. There's a lot of potential, but it's very difficult to tether to the bed. And we've supported 4 innovative offshore floating projects, one of which in Portugal I think has just reached commercial operations apparently. So I think for the different contexts, solutions do exist, and more will be found. And what it's really about is making sure that those solutions are shared. And are really being implemented, where they fit. And here I think this kind of knowledge sharing, we learn a lot from India with the International Solar Alliance. I think a lot of the technology is being shared there. And I hope that similar structures can really help with the offshore wind to kind of help to solve some of these technical issues. The issues of supply chains have been raised, both from a security perspective and also the issue of for the offshore wind sector. So that's both about security and also about sustainability. And I know in Europe we're looking more and more at, where can we employ sort of concepts of circularity in the design and reusing materials, and also employing sustainable procurement processes. So I think that's something that probably can be brought to bear here, some of that experience. And I think India, the Honourable Minister was also mentioning, a kind of cultural tradition of respect for the environment and circularity that I think potentially is very powerful. The final area that I wanted to mention, because I see Edwin, my colleague from the European delegation here, is obviously there's a need for a lot of work on integration into the national grid, but also regional connectivity and integration, I think, can really help to particularly with renewables, where we've talked about the intermittence of supply. A lot of the kind of renewables in the region can be complementary to each other, and I think that's something that can allow India also to realize the full potential of the resources that it has. So the EU has recently, I think December last year, launched the Global Gateway Initiative, where they plan to commit 300 billion of finance to be mobilized for connectivity investments, including regional connectivity in India. And this is not a new announcement, but I think it's something where there would be potential to be supportive of investments in renewable energy in India, including in offshore wind. So I'll stop there. Those are just a few thoughts from my side, but I really look forward to hearing from the other participants, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Fenton. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to invite to the podium Mr. Oval Concepcion Diaz, Head of Renewable Energy Department, National Electrical Union, UNE, Cuba. And I'm going to also invite Shrenya from CI, who's going to be translating him for us. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause.
Buenas tardes. Yo hablo español, nos auxiliaremos de la traducción para la presentación. Bueno, primeramente felicitamos a la conferencia a la Confederación de Industria de la India y al Ministerio de Energías Nuevas y Renovables por el desarrollo de este evento. Además, agradecemos a todos los participantes que hemos tenido la oportunidad de compartir con ustedes el programa de transformación de la matriz energética de Cuba y en específico el desarrollo de la energía eólica.
I would like to thank the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and the Confederation of Indian Industry for organizing this event. We thank all participants for giving us the opportunity to share with you all the program of the transformation of Cuba's energy matrix and in particular its wind energy program.
Next. La generación de electricidad de Cuba tiene una alta dependencia del 95% de los combustibles fósiles y el 41% de estos combustibles son importados. De ahí la gran necesidad de nuestro país de hacer una transformación de inmediata de la matriz energética de generación de electricidad.
Cuba's electricity generation depends 95% on fossil fuels, out of which 41% is imported. That is why it is now imperative to change Cuba's energy matrix.
Para Cuba, el cambio de la matriz energética está dentro de las principales prioridades del gobierno y se trabaja en un intenso trabajo para llegar al 100% de la generación a partir de las fuentes renovables de energía. Para ello es necesario instalar 612 megawatts en bioeléctrica, 1.800 megawatts en parques eólicos, 13.000 megawatts en parques fotovoltaicos y unos 56 megawatts en pequeñas centrales hidroeléctricas, de forma tal que podamos alcanzar el 100% de la generación del país con fuentes renovables de energía.
For Cuba, the change in the energy matrix is among the top priorities and consists of an intensive program to reach 100% renewable energy capacity, for which it is necessary to install 612 megawatt of bioelectric energy generated through biomass, 1800 megawatt of wind energy parks, 13,000 megawatt of solar PV parks, and 56 megawatt of hydroelectric power centers.
En la evaluación del potencial eólico de nuestro país se han estudiado 21 zonas con alto potencial y condiciones integrales y ventajosas para el desarrollo de la energía eólica, con una potencia técnicamente estudiada de unos 1.800 megawatts, lo cual tiene un factor de capacidad superior al 34%.
In the evaluation of the wind energy potential of Cuba, 21 zones have been studied that have the basic, integral, and advantageous conditions for such an enterprise, with the technical potential of 1800 megawatt, where the average capacity factor is more than 34%.
En el mapa que se muestra en la pantalla se encuentran los 13 proyectos eólicos que hoy cuentan con un financiamiento o están adjudicados a empresas, a inversiones extranjeras. Y dentro de estos proyectos tenemos el proyecto del Parque Eólico Río Seco 1, que se ejecuta con un financiamiento del gobierno de la India.
In the map of Cuba there, on the screen can be seen 13 wind energy projects that have been externally financed or are in the process of attracting foreign investment. Among these is the Rio Seco 1 wind energy park that has an operational credit provided by the Government of India.
Además, tenemos otras 9 zonas con alto potencial eólico que son zonas que están en proceso de estudio y con posibilidades de invertir para nuevos proyectos eólicos.
Moreover, there are 9 other areas identified with high potential that are available for further studies and investment.
En el proyecto específico del Parque Eólico Río Seco 1 se cuenta con un estudio de factibilidad elaborado por el Instituto de Energía Eólica de la India, NIWE, y aprobado por el gobierno de la India.
In the Rio Seco 1 wind energy project, a feasibility study was carried out by India's National Institute of Wind Energy, the NIWE, and approved and passed by the Government of India.
Esto es una inversión de la Unión Eléctrica y la parte cubana aporta 50,4 millones de dólares en la ejecución de todas las obras civiles, obras inducidas, como es el caso del vial de acceso que se muestra en la pantalla, y el gobierno de la India aporta 70 millones de dólares en función de todo lo que es la importación del equipamiento tecnológico, el montaje y su puesta en marcha.
In this project, the Cuban contribution is $50.4 million for the civil execution of the works undertaken, as well as the social capital. Like you can see here on the screen, the 7-kilometer under construction access road. And for the same project, the government of India has contributed $70 million for the acquisition of technological equipment for the setup and initiation of the project.
Según los procedimientos establecidos por el gobierno de la India, en estos momentos nos encontramos en la selección de la empresa consultora para ejecutar el PMC y la selección o la precalificación de la empresa para ejecutar el EPC. Por lo que exhortamos a todas las empresas aquí participantes a que puedan participar en la precalificación para poder trabajar en la construcción del parque eólico Río Seco.
At the moment, the project is in the process of selecting a consultant company to undertake the project management contract, and in the figuring out of the companies that would possibly participate in the execution of it, or the EPC. We sincerely request the companies present here to kindly consider participating in the execution of this project that already has a high level of preparedness and includes assured financing by the Government of India.
Este es un proyecto que cuenta con el financiamiento seguro y por lo tanto, queremos que haya una gran participación de empresas indias en la precalificación para su ejecución. En las próximas diapositivas que presentamos, podrán ver los alcances a ejecutar por las empresas que realizará o por la empresa que se seleccione para ejecutar el EPC y los trabajos que realiza la parte cubana, así como un grupo de incentivos aprobados por el gobierno cubano para la ejecución de las inversiones relacionadas con la fuente renovable de energía.
In the following slides of the presentation, you can see the scope for the company that would be chosen for the EPC, the remit of the Cuban side, as well as the bunch or group of incentives that has been approved by the Cuban government for welcoming foreign investment into the country.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we arrive at the special address for which I take the privilege of inviting Mr. Dinesh Dayanand Jagdale. He is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dinesh Jagdale.
Shall I close this?
Yes, you're not using it?
No, thank you. Good afternoon. Mr. Parag Sharma, Co-Chairman, CIA Renewable Energy Council, Dr. P.K.C. Bose, Ms. Fenton, Ms. Diaz, all the distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, warm welcome and look forward to this deliberation after what we have seen in the morning today in terms of the intent and the targets that the Government of India is looking at, the steps that the Government of India and along with you is looking at the Aatmanirbhar Bharat or the self-reliance in terms of the entire transition that we as a country and we as a responsible country in this world are taking towards. The country has seen tremendous development over the last 4 decades in terms of the wind growth, and it is that you and it is that wind who has brought the renewable energy map of this country into the entire attention of the world. We have several eminent industrialists today who have contributed to the best of their efforts. My prayers to Sri Tulsi Tanti for leading this entire green energy revolution and his efforts into wind manufacturing and enabling the growth and showing the concept of wind, how it works, enabling his team to go to the consumer and the customer and showing how the business works, and creating an enabling environment in the country that has brought India today a 42 gigawatt of wind energy installed capacity. We have Mr. Bose who has himself being a veteran into this industry, right from the raw material to the turbines that we speak in, this one of the best in terms of technology. And we have seen several other players who are there as a part of this deliberation, and I would really like them to endeavor that wind has not been spoken so aggressively in terms of the space that it should. But wind has silently led this growth, has led this revolution, has led this energy transition into this country. While the target was 60 gigawatts to be achieved by the end of this year, it has seen 42 gigawatts of installed capacity. It has 13 gigawatts odd about in terms of the installation at various stages. But obviously, over the last 3-4 years, we have not seen the growth at which it should grow. It has not seen the zeal and the intent at which it should have been. And that's one concern I would like to place before you, that the execution of wind projects had to be a little more with a rapid rigor, that we need to now see that all those projects which are in our installation go to a next level and are commissioned, and we go to that capacity above 50 gigawatt very soon. Over the few years, the pandemic and other supply chain issues has not helped to the competitiveness of wind, and therefore we struggled, the entire industry struggled with its other technologies which were slightly better placed in terms of the tariff that it can deliver as the levelized cost of energy over the next 25 years. And therefore, as a consumer, as a distribution company, obviously there is a choice between electricity and which source to be used. So solar got a slightly aggressive requirement, and it has now reached 60 gigawatts, but I'm sure these two technologies complement each other. And therefore, in our quest, in our intention to make renewable as the mainstream of this country in terms of the electricity mix that we can achieve by 2030 and beyond 2030, leading to the net zero goal of 2070, wind energy will play a very dominant role. And we, as government, along with your stakeholders, will make that effort to ensure that this happens. Today's topic, I think, was related to offshore, and I should deliberate with you on that a little more. I see Parag spoke about the opportunities and challenges as well. Just a slight correction. I need to specify that the overall trajectory that we have given in the strategy paper talks about 37 gigawatt of capacities, and which are distributed into 3 models, Model 1, Model 2, Model 3. While Model 1 capacities are slightly dynamic in nature, because as soon as we complete our assessment in terms of the wind resource and other technical data sets, the capacity will increase. But today, being Gujarat, it is 1 gigawatt. Model 2, we are talking of 24 gigawatt, and Model 3, we are talking of 12 gigawatt. Now, these models have come up based on a very intent deliberation with you and the international community sitting around. And I would really like Ms. Fenton to know that you will find Indian customers coming to you very soon, because we believe that the Indian offshore here is now on a rise. And the 4 aspects which I normally talk about any particular technology or investment to be successful. One is the technical resource which it should have. We have a long coastline of 7,600 kilometers. We have a huge potential that has been identified of 70 gigawatts across these 2 states alone. And the World Bank report says that if we are slightly more optimistic in terms of the technology that come forward, this potential itself will be beyond 200 gigawatts. And that's today's assessment based on the technologies that are on the horizon. So we have a good resource. Gujarat slightly has a lesser wind potential, but Tamil Nadu is as good as the best potential sites you will find in the North Sea. And therefore, I find there is a lot of intent of all the international community to come and invest here in the offshore wind projects. The second part is in terms of any power project is the ability to evacuate the infrastructure that is needed for evacuation of the electricity that is generated. And we in our strategy paper have clearly shown our intent that the entire evacuation facility up to the offshore pooling substation will be built and borne by the Government of India. We have the central transmission utility which has already planned for a evacuation of 10 gigawatts, 5 gigawatts across the coast of Gujarat and 5 gigawatts across the coast of Tamil Nadu. So that planning is already been done. We are now looking at mobilizing the financial resource and the expertise that can start looking at building, making the plans and then building the evacuation, so that when the projects are in the projects are being built up and they are ready for commissioning, we will ensure that the evacuation will not be a constraint. That's also the learning that we have seen for the last 5 to 6 years, that evacuation becomes a very key, and that's the learnings that we are putting it in our offshore strategy as well. Now, third is obviously we talk about land issues. We have seen onshore issues. We have seen certain issues in several states. Obviously, looking at the struggle that some of the private land has, I think offshore is something very easy, right? You know, we as the central government will do entire activities that are required to get the clearances for the, we call it stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1, and I'm happy to note that stage 1 clearances for all the seabed blocks that we have put in the 37 gigawatt trajectory has already been received. And stage 2, Ministry along with National Institute of Wind Energy will take that ownership and will help you to ensure that we get those clearances, speedy clearances, single window clearances as we call. We are developing those portals related activities. We were talking to the sister ministries that are part of this approval process. And I'm sure by the time we reach to maybe next 1 or 2 months, we will have much more clarity, and along with you, we can also have a consultation process which will also clear those if any doubts are there in your mind. And the fourth is finance. And being a part of this panel today, we had European Investment Bank, we have certain international colleagues, we have European Union, we have World Bank and several others. And we have our own IRIDA today here, who is working on certain strategies that will enable debt finance being available for offshore wind sector. The equity is chasing good projects, and I promise you, and I think we can look from the experience that we had over the 118 gigawatt of wind and solar combined today, that India is pretty risk, the mitigation risk, the risk mitigation policies have been put in place, including right from the allocation to payments to tendering. And therefore, when you come into this offshore wind sector, furthermore, ease of doing business practices will be evolved. So, a regulatory domain, I'm sure, will be to your expectations. And when we see on all these 4 fronts, and therefore finance being available, so all these 4 fronts, and what do you need? Just you will have to follow the process that we intend to have. But I can always assure you that the ministry will always listen to the expectations of these of the community that is going to invest, and therefore the stakeholder consultation process has been slightly in advance, more robust, and we have been taking your comments and suggestions as we go on every process. The next step forward that we are going to now do, what has happened is Model 3 suddenly has got a lot of interest. When I say Model 3, the model where there will be a leasing of seabed blocks on a competitive basis, and therefore you will like to construct offshore wind projects for your own captive need, or for selling the power bilaterally under a third-party sale arrangement, or even on the power exchanges. So that gives us more strength, because I think that is the future as well. We need to also bring in alternative business models that will help evacuating power and selling power to the consumers who are willing to buy on a bilateral basis rather than going through the DISCOM route. So we have worked on the set of documents with the help of the experts who have really worked into the sector. We had consultation rounds with the countries of Denmark, UK, European Union, Netherlands, and many others who have, including the United States, who have worked and have shown some kind of success in their trajectories. So with 56 gigawatt offshore wind already there in the whole world as of the last year, and we can really take we can count on the experience and the learnings and take this journey forward. The important point which Dr. Bose mentioned was on 2-3 aspects. One is infrastructure, and the second was, I think, on the raw material availability. Ports, I'm happy to share that the European Investment European Union had commissioned a paper and a project on which we identified several ports, the shortcomings in the ports that would need to be developed in terms of taking the load that is required for offshore wind domain, offshore wind turbines. And we have analyzed several ports across the coast of Tamil Nadu and across the coast of Gujarat as well. And I can say that the gaps have been identified, and with the help of the Ministry of Shipping and the port authorities in the port themselves are looking at business model that can, based on the business model that they are conceiving, there will be a substantial investment into the upgradation of these ports, and very soon that activities will be taken up. I'm confident that the developer shouldn't be more worried on this. Tuticorin as well as the ports across Gujarat, Pipavav port, it will be ready very soon. On the raw material and the availability, I think this together, I think raw material. So one side there is an opportunity to bring in, to invest into more raw material. There is an opportunity to bring in investors who can work as OEMs in this country to support the value chain that we talk about wind, whether it's onshore and offshore. Now onshore, the wind itself has a very unique advantage because 13 gigawatt and all the manufacturers globally who are the best manufacturers treated as the best in the world are already present here. They have their assembly units, they have their expertise, they have the best of the talent already here in India. It's just about a more interest and believing that there is a business that now can not only cater to the domestic demand in India, but also to cater to the international demand of Far East Asia, Southeast Asia, right from Japan to Australia, and why not? We are exporting turbines to Europe and US. And therefore, India traditionally, naturally, by its own unique advantage of the skills and the expertise that we have, will become a natural source for you to partner with for the raw material that is required, for whether it's a gearbox, whether it's a blade. And Dr. Bose, I intend that in future, we should become a global manufacturer of blades. Why should? We should also have that ability to manufacture blades for the world. And we at the ministry are taking some steps to provide you the infrastructure. National Institute of Wind Energy is working on certain concepts that will provide, whether it's the test facilities, whether it's the facilities to really type test certain activities. We are working on the standards as well to adopt those that will make the investments in India more safe, secure, and quality prone. So there is a lot of things going on into our planning, but as I said, this planning, along with your consultations, the comments and suggestions, will make this journey a more robust one. And I look forward to all the comments and suggestions that we will be getting it in due course of time on the drafts, the tender drafts, the RFS, the other execution drafts as well. But more importantly, I want to assure you that wind should be given the due recognition that you have been giving over the last 4 decades. Please gear up the execution. We are here to support on any front that is required. And I see our partners in states are really keen to look at wind because they believe wind has that ability to smoothen the the generation curve, which is doing Tamil Nadu CMD tangent co, whether it's Gujarat, whether it's Maharashtra, whether it's Karnataka. I think we had the Energy Ministers Conference, and today when morning I received an email from Gujarat. They are now following up with us that when would be the next offshore tender coming. They have also given us in writing the support that they will be ready to buy the initial gigawatts of offshore wind power. So that intent is there. I am sure you all will take this as a key deliverables from your, as a corporate entity. You will take this very seriously. I look forward. I am available for any concerns and queries that you may have, and we together, I think we will be able to take this journey forward. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jagdale. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite Mr. Parag Sharma once again, and this time to render the concluding remarks. Sir.
Thanks, Mr. Jagdale, for your remarks. We obviously were not knowing so many things happening in the offshore wind area. And just to summarize what he said, so he's talking about that the entire 37 gigawatt have got the stage 1 clearance, stage 2 clearance is under progress. He told us about 10 gigawatt of evacuation plan, which is already moving. He was also mentioning about Gujarat being ready to the extent of chasing MNRE about the first one bid, and I believe they have also agreed to offtake this power at a slightly higher rate. And Model 3, which is the first model where the 4 gigawatt is about to be bid out, is something where investors have been showing a lot of interest. But having said that, from the industry side, we only have 2 requests. If we can push the VGF a little bit faster, because that would be the key to the success of offshore wind. And the second is, though we are starting with Model 3, where the government doesn't have responsibility for off-taking the power, but we believe to have a good start for this sector, and we have already learned from our last attempt on offshore wind, where there were 23 expression of interest and things got delayed, that if an offtake agreement is offered for at least the first few projects, that would give us a real good start. With this, I close this session. I thank Dr. Bose, Dr. Nina, Mr. Diaz for contributing to this session. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. Esteemed panelists, please give us a photo opportunity, a group photograph. And ladies and gentlemen, with this, we will go on to the plenary session, the next plenary session immediately. There will not be a break. There's, of course, been running tea. I'm going to request you to please remain seated. And please accept my apologies that we are running behind schedule. The panelists, of course, have been contributing by keeping their addresses very concise so that we can catch up with the schedule. So thank you very much once again. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go on to the next session in a minute. That's how much time we will take to reset the days. The session is themed Green Hydrogen, ladies and gentlemen, accelerating the decarbonization. And this is what we heard from the Honorable Minister, Shri R.K. Singh this morning. The importance of green hydrogen cannot be ruled out. Green hydrogen generated from renewable energies has emerged as one of the strongest candidates for helping decarbonize sectors, leading to reduced or minimal dependency on electricity, and this has the potential to take us a step closer to carbon neutrality, which brings us to our next session, Green Hydrogen, accelerating the decarbonization, where we're going to be deliberating potential prospects, research and innovation, India's green hydrogen plan, and indigenization of electrolyzer. And we are almost set, and the panelists are here as well. So, almost set, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I'd like to remind you about the registration for the 19th. And the dais is now set, ladies and gentlemen. Let me invite the panelists. May I invite Mr. Vineet Mittal, Co-Chairman CI Renewable Energy Council and Chairman Avada Group, on stage with a big round of applause. Welcome. Mr. Ashu Singhal, Executive Director, GAIL, who's going to be offering an industry perspective. May I invite you, sir? Kindly join us on the dais. The international perspective will be rendered by Ms. Hana Chambers, India Program International Energy Agency. May I request you, Ms. Hana, to please join us on stage. There she is. Professor Dr. Christopher Hebling, Director Division Hydrogen Technologies, Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems, ISC. May I invite you to please be seated. And Dr. Martin Lux, Head of Energy Team, KfW. Dr. Martin Lux. I'd also like to invite Dr. Vandana Kumar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Please join me in welcoming her. And Professor Ajay Kumar Sood, Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. Please join me in welcoming him, ladies and gentlemen, with a big round of applause. Professor Sood has an urgent meeting and he has to leave in the middle of the session. Thank you very much, sir, for kindly consenting to stay with us despite your commitments on time. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Mr. Vineet Mittal, Co-Chairman, CI Renewable Energy Council and Chairman, Avada Group, to render the welcome remarks.
Good afternoon, friends. I feel happy to be among all of you to discuss and moderate probably the most important session of the today of adoption of green hydrogen and green ammonia and its variant in Indian economy. And for enlightening us their perspective, we have with us Professor Ajay Kumar Sood, Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India, Dr. Vandana Kumar, Additional Secretary, MNRE, Mr. Ashu Shingal from GAIL, Mr. Rajnath Ram from Niti Aayog, Ms. Hannah Chambers from International Energy Agency, Professor Dr. Christopher Hebling, who is Director, Division Hydrogen Technology from Fraunhofer Institutes, and Dr. Martin Lux, who heads Energy Team at KfW. We are all aware the need to decarbonize the economy, and I dare say that hydrogen is like Sanjeevani Booty, and it's going to solve a lot of challenges for the sectors which were thought cannot be decarbonized or hard to abate sector like steel, other commodities, as well as city gas or substitute for oil to that extent. And it's very important from our Prime Minister's vision of making India truly self-reliant in terms of its own energy requirement. And 2047 target of India where it doesn't have to import energy and we can do it on our own either through electrifying our mobility or in many sectors of mobility using hydrogen and its variant as a fuel. So it's a very interesting topic, and luckily we have a very good panel here to share their thoughts and vision. Okay, so I would request Professor Ajay Sood to share his thoughts and opening key remarks with all of us. Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Can share the slides?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me here. First of all, my apologies that I will have to leave in between this because the session got delayed by about 35-40 minutes and I have another commitment later in the afternoon. But so thank you for adjusting this program and have me rather at the end but in the beginning. So I'll slightly modify my comments because I had put that in perspective when I was trying to prepare my slides. So I made this slide just for structuring my own thoughts, and a lot of it must be known to all of you, but I just thought that let's see what are the issues, what are the R&D issues, and what are the issues where we need to focus as we go along for the green hydrogen mission. So I found that there are many reports, of course, and which are coming from various sectors, but this recent report
from Niti Aayog along with RMI, which is quite recent in June 2022, puts the data in the perspective I thought is an interesting thing, and I'm sure you must have seen it, but if not, I'll suggest that it is worth looking at it. So let me just start by saying that what we are talking is really not a new technology. Actually, we are revisiting some of it with renewed vigor because we have made a mess of the climate. So this urgency to get green hydrogen in our daily life is something very welcome. But just I put this from this, I have given the source of this figure, that the first industrial water electrolyzer was developed in 1888. So we are really not talking of some huge technology which has come up in the last few years. No, it's not like a quantum technology where a lot more needs to be understood. Only thing is we have to see how to do it safely, how to do it in the economical way, and how to take care of all the materials requirement. So just to, we all know that there are various shades of hydrogen, and what we are talking in this session is the green hydrogen, which is coming from electrolysis using renewable electricity, and also I'll put the biogas produced hydrogen also in the same category. So again, very well known that we have polymer electrolyte and PEM electrolyzers, alkaline electrolyzers, solid oxide, anion exchange, and all these are happening, and it depends on what kind of material comfort you have or the economy, these will be used. So if in alkaline one you use nickel, but in the other one you use costly metals like iridium or platinum. Also we have to realize from the commercial angle, this has two parts electrolyzers. One is the stack and other is the balance of plants, and both are almost equal. So even if you take the stacks, let's say you purchase them, but you still have a possibility of 50% contribution in indigenization in this. And the market is pretty huge, almost of $5 billion US dollar by 2030 and almost $31 billion in 2050. So this recent news I thought I'll flash because it has some connection with my alma mater, Indian Institute of Science. It's a selfish slide where the biogas along with steam to make syngen is used to show that it has more hydrogen. For example, 100 gram of hydrogen from 1 kilogram of biomass, even though 60 gram of hydrogen are present in 1 kilogram of biomass, because you are using steam along with biomass. So this is something I thought is another attractive route when you also talk of waste to wealth. So this is just a slide to show the commitment to hydrogen in various next term, mid-term and long-term. I will not read this, these numbers are known to you, where we are talking of almost 5 million metric ton in 2030. So this is again from this hydrogen mission document, which MNRE produced. I have given the reference, where we are talking of by 2030, 4 million metric ton of green hydrogen, and various data I have given. These numbers keep on changing depending on whom you talk to. 100 gigawatt can become 60 or different depending on the perception. For example, in this report it talks of 60 gigawatt in 2030 and 15 to 20 metric ton of green steel, and almost 1 billion required in the R&D to achieve all this. So we have the three domains: production, storage and transport, and usage. And in all of them, R&D is needed and manufacturing is needed. So all these three domains of hydrogen are equally important. In storage and transport, one of the best options people are looking at, all of you, is the pressurized storage tank. Now question is, how do we indigenize making these storage tanks, which are type 3 and type 4, which can take the compressed hydrogen gas, and with various parameters I have given. For type 3 it is 350 bar, and for the other one it is 700 bar. It is not very trivial to make this type 4 compressed hydrogen tanks. I am talking in the context of our country, but already some R&D has been done and some progress has been made using the carbon fibers and so on. Here the issue of hydrogen embrittlement is known to all of us, and that has to be dealt with in the materials aspect, but it is doable. Metal hydride, earlier years people did talk of it. You need 7% hydrogen storage per weight. It is around 4-5%, claims of 7% in graphene, but still really not a viable plant that has come up. Chemical storage and of course pipelines for transport are equally important when you keep the embrittlement issue in the pipelines. So here again a slide at a glance. I have given the reference of the report again. We are looking at as a fuel, we are looking as a feedstock, and we are looking again as heat. All these are equally important. So we are talking of hydrogen fuel cells, and it is in the report it says very clearly that this will occupy much less space as compared to lithium-ion battery space. And various advantages I have given. Again, green ammonia in fertilizers is a big usage, and India is importing almost 30% of urea annually. So this is where the green hydrogen, making it green ammonia, will be a game changer. And in, again in steel industry, in direct reduction ore process, there is absolutely, we need to step up, and we have commitments on that, as Honorable Prime Minister said. So this is again, we need to look at in the transport using the fuel cells, and especially in heavy trucking, this is absolutely going to be a game changer. Shipping and aviation also, but again I have said that we need to look at this shipping and aviation right from the beginning to see how this can be used. And in the report it says very clearly, there is an indication that by 2030, 2035, green hydrogen will become economical. And the green hydrogen market is about $8 billion in 2030, and by 2050 it is expected to be $340 billion. So this is a roadmap as per the report. Again I said I have borrowed heavily from the report because it's very recent, and I thought it's a good starting point to discuss with various timelines for enabling green ammonia, refinery, in fertilizers, and so on, and green steel. So all this is happening, and I thought I'll mention just here this recent event which happened last week with Toyota Kirloskar was the flexi fuel hybrid electrical using the 10 to 100% of ethanol. Now here one can easily think of right away using green methanol and fuel cell hybrid. So this is again an avenue where enormous scope is there. So it will be fully green, right from the biofuel to using the fuel cell technology. So here I'll just flash what CSIR has been doing, because we had a presentation from them. Again, lot of labs are involved which are looking at all the three aspects of generation, storage and utilization, and they have some successes which I have taken from them, the slide, namely the PEMFC, this 3 kilowatt electrolyzer, and also fuel cell electric bus, which they have demonstrated high temperature PMFC based combined cooling and power system and so on. So it only says that R&D is at advanced stage in many quarters, including IOC, and this is where we need to step up. So I'll just close this presentation to say that we need to really cut down the price of green hydrogen, not only to $2 per kilogram, but aim for $1 per kilogram, and really see all the sectors of storage, production by using electrolyzers and biomass, and the usage, be it in steel industry, be it in fertilizer, be it in transport. All three sectors and many other, which I said hybrid transport, will be really the need of the hour. With this, let me thank you, all of you, for giving me this opportunity to share our thinking, and I'm sure conclaves like this will go a long way to identify the gaps for the country, also in the policy domain, what needs to be done. And this is where the partnership with government, private sector, and R&Ds and academia will be critical to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Ajay Kumar Sood is now going to be taking our leave, maybe in a few minutes. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Vandana Kumar, the Additional Secretary of MNRE, also has an urgent meeting to go to. So I'm going to request her to speak since we are lagging behind. So for the special address, may I invite Dr. Vandana Kumar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome her.
Okay. Very warm good afternoon. Thank you, Vinitji, Professor Sood, Dr. Heblis, Ms. Chambers, Dr. Lux. It's a pleasure to be in your midst and share some of the work that we've been doing. Professor Sood did share some bits from the National Green Hydrogen Mission, although I think it's the first time that I'm seeing that in public. So thank you so much for this dialogue. I think it's extremely important, as we've seen throughout the morning as well. It's a theme which is very topical. Everyone's very sanguine about it, and it's something that we need to work on with great sense of urgency as well, as the global consensus builds towards utilizing hydrogen in a big way, creating a hydrogen economy. Professor Sood has covered the scientific aspects of it, and grateful for the R&D aspects that you covered, sir. I'll take on some of the policy aspects, what we are trying to do, how we're trying to bridge the gaps, what we've heard from the industry and how we're trying to capture that in the mission, and the preparatory activities that we've undertaken. So if we do look at our consumption of fossil fuels, we would see that 34% of it goes in the various industry sectors. Transport 33, buildings 26. We also know of our greening of the grid that we've taken up in a very significant way. 25% of our electricity generated today is from the renewable sources. 41% of our installed capacity is from the renewables again. So on that front, we've done a fair bit of work, and we've made excellent progress as well, which is quite well acknowledged as well. But it's now the industrial sectors where, whether we use it as an energy carrier or feedstock, those are the areas which are of immense interest to us. 5.2 million tons of hydrogen is consumed in the country today. Approximately 3 million tons of ammonia goes towards ammonia. We do import fair bit of ammonia as well. So that is an area where perhaps some quick wins lie, and that's what we're talking to with the fertilizer industry as to how do we replace that imported gray ammonia with the domestic green ammonia. And why we are so confident? Because we've already built such a vibrant and robust renewable energy sector. We have industry which is sanguine about it, wants to participate in the green hydrogen industry. The RE players are very sanguine about it. We have a very robust policy framework which is evolving. We are constantly listening to the industry and trying to work in tandem with everyone to come up with an ecosystem which is conducive towards an RE sector and now green hydrogen as well. And fortunately, we have an international climate which is also so well suited for it as well. 25 countries have announced their strategies or roadmaps, some of which I have listed here. And this is where the global consensus is building. And from the IEA and IRNA reports, approximately 25 such strategies are in the works as well, and India is one of them. And we are hopeful that our National Green Hydrogen Mission will get approved very soon, and we should then be able to come out with very concrete kind of measures that we are going to be taking. If we look at some of the countries, US has announced a very ambitious earth shot, $1 per kg in a decade's time, and they have announced some very strong measures, a subsidy of, or rather, a tax credit of $3 per kg. Similarly, Germany has come out with some very interesting targets and very earnest efforts as well. We work very closely with Dr. Lux and GIZ and several other German partners. So very significant and earnest efforts going on there, and we value the partnership that we have with them as well. Similarly, if we move down global south, then we do find that Chile has made some very ambitious targets. They propose to produce the cheapest green hydrogen by 2030. So there's a lot of excitement around green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, or as the Honorable Minister said in the morning, decarbonized hydrogen as well in the community. Germany again has launched an excellent initiative, which is the Hydrogen Global Initiative for auction of green hydrogen. Some of the industry partners are aware of those measures and are keen to participate there as well. EU, on the other side, has a 20 million metric ton target by 2030, and they do propose to import half of it. So on these slides, you will also see the opportunities which exist for the industry today, for trade and for collaborations of various kinds. ADNOC has already dispatched the first shipment of low-carbon ammonia to Germany. So some of these developments are very interesting and something to watch for. Coming to the National Green Hydrogen Mission, it's the mission we have prepared very painstakingly, curated it with extensive stakeholder consultations with the industry, learnings from the various countries which have already launched the strategies and roadmaps in discussions, as also looking at the standards around the world. So there's been a lot of brainstorming, a lot of thinking which has gone into the mission, and we have proposed this mission, which is on the anvil of approvals. Through this mission, we intend creating an extensive and comprehensive ecosystem for green hydrogen, which will comprise demand creation measures. As Professor Sood mentioned, it's a technology that goes back more than a century, 150 years or so. But it has not seen the scale that perhaps it could, for one reason, that there is no bulk sustainable demand. So that is something that we need to work on collectively, collaboratively among nations. And the ISA member countries are also here today and we'll be deliberating several subjects over the next 2 days as well. So this is where we all need to work together. We did look at the sectors where perhaps there can be offtakes which can be early, such as refining and fertilizers. And on the other side, there are some sectors which may take a little while, like shipping or even aviation. Green steel, mobility are already on the anvil, industries are very keen, and work has already commenced. And so first we take some pilot projects in these areas, and then as industry matures, as the costs come down, the uptake can happen in other sectors as well. On the supply side, we do recognize that it's a very nascent industry, which will require support for scaling up. So some measures we have proposed in our mission to support the electrolyzer manufacturing and some of the other critical components and equipment as well. Green hydrogen production itself will perhaps have to be supported, so there's some measures that we have proposed. The other key enablers will remain infrastructure. If you do not have storage, if you do not have transportation, perhaps it cannot again scale. So those are going to be very important parts. When we are looking at regulations and standards, different people understand hydrogen, decarbonized, low carbon, green, or the various colors which were just mentioned. Ultimately, it will all have to come down to the carbon emissions around it, and that is how the world will perhaps arrive at some of the definitions, and if not definitions, perhaps some common principles to understand what we understand by green hydrogen or any other low carbon hydrogen. So standards are going to be very vital. We are already working in tandem with several organizations. R&D and innovation will absolutely be the bedrock and the foundation on which we will have to build this mission, because we need to bring down costs. We need to enhance the affordability of green hydrogen. So working on technologies is going to be absolutely vital to this mission. Scale is critical to, or rather demand creation is critical to achieving that scale. So we will have to bring in some measures, as it may not happen organically. That's the sense we have, and then we need to work on this within the country, and we need to work with various partner countries to ensure that there is a sustainable bulk demand in various sectors, so that there can be a real offtake of hydrogen. As part of this mission, we have a multi-pronged approaches to R&D as well. While some projects can be on mission mode, there will be others which will be in either partnership with in PPP mode, or will be through startups. We do hope to build a very vibrant ecosystem there as well. There is an expert group which has been proposed to be chaired by PSA in this area. And we do hope that we will be able to work on several of the R&D focus areas which were just mentioned by Professor Sood. So it's not just electrolyzers, fuel cell vehicles, but also the various critical components of the electrolyzers and fuel cells. So, and we also need to explore other pathways for hydrogen, one chiefly being from biomass to hydrogen as well. So all of these areas we are looking at very keenly to address through the mission. Now, depending on the discussions that we've had with the industry, I have tried to map where lies our RE potential, where lie our off-takers, whether it is the refineries, fertilizers, NG pipelines, steel plants, or ports where we intend, from where we intend exporting, let's say, green ammonia. So, and if we map all of these on one map, then that is where I derive a third map on the right-hand side. based on the discussions with the industry, and industry has shown an interest to install 25 million metric ton capacity of green ammonia by 2030, much of it coming by 2026. So my compliments to the industry for such audacious goals and their excitement about it and their passion towards greening our hard-to-abate sectors. So the little triangles that you see are all the potential locations for the green hydrogen projects. So we do see that there will be a requirement of either co-locating the RE with these green hydrogen projects, or we may have to do an intrastate or interstate transmission of power, or alternatively of green ammonia. So there are 3 models which will perhaps work out, and as we go along there will be greater clarity on it. There are plenty of trade opportunities, as we have mentioned, all of us recognize. When we see that EU wants to import 10 million metric ton of green hydrogen, there are some countries which are going to be in a position to supply that. And India has a great competitive advantage considering our lowest tariffs of RE, our vibrant RE sector, and our industry which is very, very keen to work in this space. So if you look at these pathways, then India could potentially supply to various countries. Similar is the situation of Australia and Chile as well. So it's the northern hemisphere which perhaps countries will consume the hydrogen which is produced in the global south, we could say that. We have already taken up several preparatory activities. In February this year, a policy was announced where the benefits which are available to the RE sector have been extended to green hydrogen. We are already working on the regulations, codes and standards. Vinitji himself is chairing one of the subgroups. We have excellent participation from the industry there, and in collaboration we are identifying the gaps in our regulation and also trying to bridge those gaps. We are also preparing the model bidding guidelines for green hydrogen. It's been vetted by everyone, and hopefully we should be coming out with those very soon. They are only going to be model guidelines, and the organizations which have significant experience in it hopefully will also be able to do it on their own. On standards, there's an excellent engagement. EU came out with a standard. We engaged with them. We found there were certain restrictions in those. Among other countries, India also had a strong voice. And recently, they have relaxed those standards. And we do envision that India should be able to export green hydrogen to EU and several other countries. We have also undertaken several cooperation measures with many countries bilaterally and at multilateral institutions as well. It's a continuous discussion that we are having on not just policies but also green financing, which we've identified as a very important lever to come about with these developments. Although the mission is still on the anvil, but you can see that there are several companies which are already making tie-ups, and there's a lot of interest in green hydrogen. So thank you so much for all this interest in this sector, and we are sure that together we will make it happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, now for the international perspective, may I request Professor Dr. Christopher Hebling, Director, Division Hydrogen Technologies, Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems, ISC. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Christopher Hebling. Please put your hands together.
Thank you very much for having me here, and thank you very much also for the wise thoughts which have been spread already. So I won't have, I have tons of slides, but I will skip all of them because everything has been said by Professor Sood and Dr. Kumar in terms of the key topics which have to be addressed. I'm with the Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems in Germany. Fraunhofer is the largest organization for applied research in Europe. We have a team of like 30,000 engineers and scientists, and our mission is to address the key topics of society, and of course energy is one of them. I'm heading the division Hydrogen Technologies, and as a personal note, I started my career as a physicist in photovoltaics, and 20 years ago, after my PhD, I thought, well, if we believe that photovoltaics and other renewable energy sources will be dominant in the future, we need an equivalent molecule next to green electrons. We need green molecules. So I switched my topics to hydrogen, and I'm very happy to have made this move, because now we're in the time that, yes, we have the global picture in mind, and global picture means if you look into the economies in the world, most of them have in their energy share about 20% is covered by electrons. 80% is delivered by molecules, hydrocarbon molecules based on natural gas, coal and oil. This is exact the share also in Germany. 20%, a bit more than 20% of our end energy consumption is based on electrons. So we started 20 years ago to have the so-called Energiewende, so the energy system transformation. And based on that, we are trying to squeeze. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine, sir. Nice to meet you. Based on that, we started the so-called Renewable Energy Law, which gave out incentives for green electrons to be fed into the grid. So each operator of small and large PV or wind plants got at the beginning 60 cents per kilowatt hours as an incentive that melted down to like 6 cents at the moment. That was a pretty strong program for 20 years now. As a result of this, 50% of our electricity is green, based mostly on photovoltaics and wind, and a little bit of run-of-river and biomass. But once again, the power sector, electricity in Germany is only 20% of the end energy consumption. So some people think that with 100% green electrons, we have made the task. It's not. So 80% are molecules, and now, especially on the background of the war in Ukraine, we noticed how much we still depend on molecules. 55% of our natural gas supply was purchased from Russia. This has melted down to close to zero within like a good half of a year. And now the need for green molecules is even stronger than it had been before. Also, Europe had given the answer by the Repower EU program. Dr. Kumar, you mentioned it, which says we need like 10 million tons of green hydrogen produced within Europe, but another 10 million tons to be purchased from abroad. Very powerful program. If you translate it, it depends on where you would set up your electrolyzers. It's on the order of 200 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity just to feed the needs of Europe. And the uptakers are waiting desperately for green hydrogen, especially the industry sector, like green steel is highly wanted. But the transport sector is also one of the sectors which which desperately needs a new fuel, so to speak. And talking about new fuels, I just want to mention that if you want to defossilize the transport sector, especially, all sectors, road, ship, and aircrafts, we need all possibilities to do so. Road transport for small vehicles, certainly that's the realm of battery-driven cars, but longer range cars like our fleet operators, they need a fuel which can be fueled at a gas station, and this opens the possibility for hydrogen and fuel cells for fleet operators, for bigger cars. And also we are very deep into the science and technology of synthetic fuels, e-fuels of all kinds, mostly based on methanol to OME, to DME, to kerosene. This is a very important sector to work on, because once again we need all technologies which have the possibility to defossilize the energy system. I also would like to, I've read how to decarbonize the energy sector. I strongly believe that we do, right now our energy system is based on hydrocarbons, and the issue is that we take out all the carbon out of the ground and emit it into the air. So the hydrocarbons as such are wonderful fuels. We have to find ways to produce them in a circular economy based on renewables, and then we're set. So, and also with biomass, you have mentioned it, Dr. Kumar. Biomass is very important as a feedstock. To my belief, it's very important to use biomass as a carbon source, because the CO2 is needed to hydrogenate with a green hydrogen to longer chain molecules such as methanol and longer chain hydrocarbons. So the realm of possibility is fairly big. What is needed? It was also mentioned that infrastructure, this is key. It's the most important topic to address, because I'm traveling a lot. So I was in Australia. They say up to 100 gigawatt are under development for both photovoltaic and wind power plants in total in Australia in the next 5 to 10 years. And so I'm not worried about the generator market. The same is true for the Middle East, North Africa, for the MENA region. They ramp up also to the gigawatt scale. That's happening as we speak, and also South America. I'm also not worried about the uptaker markets because they desperately wait for the green molecules. Like in my case, Daimler trucks, they need rather today than tomorrow green fuels in order to defossilize and reduce their carbon emissions. What I'm worried about a bit more is the whole infrastructure piece in between, because this cannot be done by one party, one industry. This is an effort of international collaboration, not only in order to set up a huge pipeline system, which we need for the hydrogen, but also for the green molecules to be carried by ships and other vessels. So this is something which should be triggered at least by the public sector, by governments. And the rest, of course, as we have heard, is open to the regulatory framework. Government has to just set up the appropriate market design, and then money will be injected automatically. It was mentioned the H2 Global program. That's a kind of a double auction system which was established now in Germany. The first auction is running. This is double auction means that the cheapest supplier will win a bid, and the uptaker who wants to pay the most will get the hydrogen. So it's just a matching system, and the price in between is covered by the state in case that the hydrogen cannot meet the price of fossil hydrogen, which still is the case for a couple of years. So the first auction, I mean, it's guaranteed 900 millions for the beginning, but we're in deep discussion with the government. This might be ramped up to maybe 10 billion, maybe even 20 billion, because it's exactly what we need at the moment. We have to meet fossil parity by ramping up the technologies, and after that the market will run on its own. So, but for the first couple of years, no one knows how long it will take. State have to inject some money to cover the difference between the renewable green hydrogen and hydrogen products and the other products. But just to give you one number, and then I will close, ammonia, that's of course the fuel of our times at the moment. The production cost of green ammonia based on green hydrogen in the MENA region depends on if you look at Morocco or Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Oman. They all do some ammonia projects. They range between $350 and $750 per ton green ammonia production cost, not price, production cost. The market price at the moment, due to some other events which I've mentioned, is on the order of 1,650. So even now, the gap between green ammonia and fossil-produced ammonia is, and the price on the market is there. Fossil ammonia is on the also in the 500 to 600 at the moment. So we are already on the same spot. So we do have the fossil parity with a gray or black, however you call it, ammonia. So that's good news in a way, so that helped that the market is kind of distorted at the moment. But we're not 10 years away. We're having already markets where green products are competitive. And I would like to thank the organizers for setting up this wonderful event, and go for green hydrogen. That's a wonderful way to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hebling. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we've altered the agenda a bit, but now we'll be getting the agenda in order. And so for that, for the industry perspective, let me invite Mr. Ashu Singhal, Executive Director, GAIL. Please welcome Mr. Ashu Singhal, ladies and gentlemen.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I'd like to thank the organizers and MNRE for inviting me to talk on this important subject. Thanks first of all to the eminent panelists for covering the subject very exhaustively by Professor Sood, and from the government perspective, Dr. Kumar, and also the international perspective. So I would like to talk about how the industry looks at it and what are the plans for the industry side to cope with it. First of all, to talk about GAIL, it is the national company on natural gas transportation, gas processing, petrochemical, and also into renewable energy. So one, that the application of hydrogen is not unknown. It is, everybody knows that what are the advantages of hydrogen, how it copes up in the transition of the transition energy of each country. And every country, most of it, they have announced certain targets to meet and introduce hydrogen in a main energy basket, primary energy basket. So India is going very fast on renewable energy, and we have very ambitious target to both solar and wind by 2030 and 2040 and thereon. So one important aspect which needs to be kept in mind is that if renewable energy is excessively produced and the offtake is an issue, then that curtailment of RE can be used to produce hydrogen. And that hydrogen can be very well used as a storage or as a fuel, and almost all the applications of fossil fuels can be replaced by hydrogen. So that is another point which makes it a fuel of the future. But we have to also keep in mind the transition should be smooth, because the upstream sector investments, once if they dry up, the fossil fuel infrastructure is there in place, and to create the infrastructure for renewable energy and hydrogen will take some more time. So till that time, the transition fuel like gas can play an important role. And also hydrogen will play in future, hard to abate industries will be the things which can replace fossil fuel or coal by hydrogen. The infrastructure creation is what industry is looking at as an opportunity. And both in terms of transporting hydrogen is a big challenge. And to address that, there are few issues, few options which are available. One is that, and ideally so, that Renew Energy and electrolyzer and the consumers are at one place. That makes it the ideal situation. But that's not going to happen in almost many cases. So therefore, the other mechanism is to either transport the power and produce electrolyzer and hydrogen at the place of consumption. And one more interesting option could be that we produce hydrogen where the Renew Energy is and transport hydrogen through pipeline. Just on the back of envelope calculation, it seems that if we use 60 units of electricity and transport it, there will be transmission and distribution losses. And we produce 40 units of hydrogen as after the electrolyzer is done. So it makes sense that if the distance is more, maybe 800 kilometers or so, it makes more sense to transport hydrogen through pure hydrogen pipelines. The other option is that we do some blending in existing natural gas pipeline infrastructure. We can start with 3% to 5%, and as the codes are developed, as more pilot testing happens, the numbers can go up. But as of now, in the world, globally, there are no standards available to see how much blending is possible in natural gas pipeline networks. It is mainly because of hydrogen embrittlement, which Professor Sood also talked about. So currently, only Netherlands and UK allows hydrogen as a blended one, that too as an impurity. But having said that, there are several research going on, several pilot studies going on, which will make maybe within a year or so, some more confidence will come in the industry to blend hydrogen in the existing natural gas pipeline network. In India, we have peculiar issue of our pipelines are new gas pipelines, so it is of higher grade steel. So that is even more susceptible to hydrogen embrittlement. So once these testings are over globally and also in India, the codes will be formed and then more implementation of blending will be happening. So GAIL also in line with India's net zero targets, we have also announced our net zero ambition by 2040, scope 1 and 2, 100% reduction. And as per as the National Green Hydrogen Mission is concerned, the policy is about to be very soon, it is expected. And that's a very good document to push all the angles associated with the infrastructure creation, the demand creation, as well as maybe helping the industry to subsidize the infrastructure for the time being till the time market supports it. And now coming to some of the challenges, and first of all, the most important challenge is the affordability, which needs to be addressed because if we talk about even the blue hydrogen, that also makes sense for some time till we have green hydrogen infrastructure and also the affordability is addressed properly. Second is transportation, and there the developers and the infrastructure companies can play an important role by either laying hydrogen pipeline or blending into the existing network. The third is the regulation codes and the safety standards which need to be in place as well as the regulator. So a lot of work is happening on that side, both in global international scenario as well as in India. And finally, the demand creation which the market can support. And also, there are two aspects to it. Even if we blend the hydrogen in the gas network, first is the infrastructure existing, how it will cope up. And the second is, it will be supplied to all the customers. So one of the main concern is the impact on the CNG sector, because India is very unique in its, about a lot of gas is being consumed in the CNG. And CNG, the cylinders are having cyclic load. It goes down and it goes very high. So blending of hydrogen in that and the long-term impact on the CNG sector in particular for India will be very critical. So I hope most of the issues have been covered by the fellow panelists distinguished before me. And I will be happy to take up any question in case that is needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, For another special address on building resilient global supply chains, I'm going to be inviting the Director General of International Solar Alliance, Dr. Ajay Mathur, to kindly join the dais. Please help me welcome him with a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, sir. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, for the international perspective, may I invite Ms. Hannah Chambers, India Program International Energy Agency, to kindly address us. Please welcome the lady with a big hand to the podium. Welcome, ma'am.
Many thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to give an overview of the International Energy Agency's latest analytical insights that we released recently, just last month, as part of our annual Global Hydrogen Review. Much has been said by my fellow panelists up until now, so this should just help put into context some of the trends in this new market. So hydrogen momentum continues to be strong around the world. It's an important option in order to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, diversify our fuel mix and our fuel supply, particularly important in this current context, and also to help meet our climate ambitions. During the last year, 9 countries have adopted a national hydrogen strategy. As Dr. Vandana Kumar mentioned, she said there were 25 national strategies in existence. It's now 26, and there are a further 20 being developed. We hope to see India's national hydrogen mission very soon amongst those. In good news, industry is pushing large-scale projects to produce hydrogen from both water electrolysis and fossil fuels. And some of these have reached final investment decision. Major companies have also started to sign offtake agreements for low-emission hydrogen and its derivatives like ammonia. However, given the nascent nature and the uncertainty of the hydrogen market, many of these agreements are still non-binding. And because hydrogen is a new technology, its adoption as a low-emission energy vector is at an early stage, it requires regular and effective tracking, which is what the IEA hopes to do with our global report. This helps to assess whether developments are happening fast enough and if we are actually on a trajectory for hydrogen to play its part in the clean energy transition and in order to enhance our energy security. So to move to demand. Hydrogen demand reached 94 million tons in 2021. This is 5% higher than in 2020. And it's a recovery to above pre-pandemic levels, when hydrogen demand had reached its historic maximum. However, the majority of this increase is taking place in traditional uses of hydrogen, which is refining and the chemicals industry. Hydrogen demand in new applications is growing strongly. It's now 60% higher than in 2020, but at 40,000 tons, it's still comparatively small. However, there's a lot of good news in that 40,000 tons because the demand there is coming off the back of key applications in new technologies where hydrogen will be critical for a net zero future. An example of this is steel making. There is a first pilot project which has begun using pure hydrogen in the direct reduction of iron. And there are additionally pilot projects in hydrogen fuel cell trains, other aspects of heavy-duty transport like trucks, and over 100 pilot and demonstration projects using hydrogen and its derivatives in shipping around the world. However, whether these projects will be fully realized, as well as their economic feasibility, is still under question. The IEA's analysis of policies and projects around the world suggests that hydrogen demand could reach 115 megatons by 2030, million tons by 2030. The current project pipeline, which is at less than 2 million tons, would come from new uses. We would need 130 million tons to meet the climate pledges that have been put forward by governments around the world. And a quarter of this would need to come from heavy industry, transport, power generation, and the production of hydrogen-derived fuels. Now to move to production. The production of low-emission hydrogen was less than 1 million tons, and practically all of this in the last year has been coming from plants using fossil fuels with CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Now, this is, of course, unsustainable, but the good news is that the pipeline of projects for the production of low-emission hydrogen is growing at a very impressive speed. Our analysis of the current project pipeline suggests that if all announced projects under development are realized, annual production of low-emission hydrogen could reach up to 24 million tons by 2030, up to 14 million tons of that based on electrolysis, and up to 10 million tons on fossil fuels with CCUS. These are an impressive figure. It's equivalent to up to 70% of the annual low-emission hydrogen production that's needed to meet government's collective climate pledges by 2030. However, despite these encouraging signs of progress, there are still important challenges ahead. A planned project isn't an achieved project. Only 4% of these projects are actually under construction already or have reached final investment decision. So there's still a long way from realizing this project pipeline. This slow progress in real-world implementation is the consequence of some uncertainties about demand, which some of my panelists had mentioned, the difficulty in securing off-takers, a lack of clarity in regulatory frameworks, and of the infrastructure to deliver hydrogen to end users. However, there is good news in the new energy economy emerging if we look at electrolyzer manufacturing. There's very impressive progress in this sector. Today, electrolyzer manufacturing capacity is around 8 gigawatts per year, which is already nearly twice the capacity that was available at the end of last year. I'd also like to address trade. This is another area that is a growing area of interest. Japan and Australia have been spearheading efforts in this area, with the first shipment of liquefied hydrogen from Australia to Japan taking place in February this year. The current energy crisis and its implications for energy security mean that more and more countries are stepping up efforts here. However, based on the export-oriented projects under development, we estimate that 12 million tons of hydrogen or hydrogen-derived fuels could be exported annually by 2030, with the first projects coming online as early as next year. These projects are still in very early stages of development, and again, there are important challenges in securing customers, such as offtake and importing arrangements that are lagging behind the planned scale of exports. Standards, regulation, certification, trade infrastructure, and clarity about how trade rules can apply to hydrogen and its derivatives will help facilitate the growth of this area. Then to move to infrastructure. As Mr. Singhal from GAIL was mentioning, there are pros and cons to how you might repurpose existing gas infrastructure. Repurposing gas pipelines is significantly cheaper than building a completely new dedicated pipeline, but there are limitations related to materials and the replacement of auxiliary equipment. There are also the potential of repurposing LNG terminals. However, the possibilities here vary depending on whether the terminals will ultimately receive hydrogen or ammonia, and with the former, it faces greater technical challenges and therefore anticipated greater cost. Therefore, I'd like to move to our final policy recommendations from this report, just to wrap them up. So governments should move from announcements to policy implementation. Because the hydrogen market is new and there's uncertainty in its evolution, to support first movers to reach final investment decision, governments should take the next step and implement policies that reduce risk and improve the economic feasibility of low-emission hydrogen projects. We need to raise demand, creating demand in key applications. So policies such as auctions, mandates, quotas, requirements for public procurement, as Dr. Vandana Kumar was mentioning, are features of India's national hydrogen mission, are most welcome. Innovation and demonstration efforts, particularly in areas which can help decarbonize and improve energy security and reduce dependency on fossil fuels, like in heavy industry, heavy-duty road transport and shipping, are also critical. Governments should identify opportunities for hydrogen infrastructure and ensure that short-term actions, like investment in gas infrastructure, aligns with our long-term action plans for how we might develop our hydrogen infrastructure. Finally, the creation of an international market for hydrogen trade requires intensifying international cooperation in order to ensure interoperability of standards, transport, regulation, and we need to remove regulatory barriers. This is a new market, and so we need to be dynamic in our regulatory approach, but also have clear rules for the operation of this market. And with that, I'll conclude and thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Chambers. Ladies and gentlemen, now for a special address on building resilient global supply chains, I take the privilege of inviting to the podium Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General, International Solar Alliance. Please put your hands together and welcome him once again.
Thank you so much. First of all, welcome. I understand that I'm standing between you and lunch, and I do realize that I can become lunch if I take too long. So I will be very careful. I want to therefore begin at the end. What is it that I want to say? I want to say 4 key things. And these are that solar is now inevitable as the primary energy source everywhere, or almost everywhere. And I'll come to that in a moment. The second is that production along the entire PV value chain, going all the way from silicon to polysilicon and all the way to modules, will have to increase by an order of 3 to 10 times. This is very different from other estimates, but what we did was we looked at the kinds of growth that had been occurring because of the feedback loops that occur between lower costs, higher volumes lead to lower costs, and so on. The third is this will definitely mean that new production facilities will be needed. But the last point is that as we go ahead and develop new production facilities, we will need incentives in the geographies which want to create these incentives. We've also seen a large reduction in the price of batteries. Battery, not cell, battery prices have dropped by about 89% between 2010 and 2021. And another 20 to 30% is expected over the next 2 years. This would imply that a state-of-the-art PV system plus a state-of-the-art battery put up in about 2025 would be cheaper than any other source. So we expect that by 2030, as I said, with the possible exception of Northern Europe, solar would become the cheapest source. Solar plus storage will become the cheapest source of electricity round the clock. This is the first message that I want to leave with you. The second message that I want to leave is that in order for this to achieve this, the production capacity will have to increase by 3 to 10 times by 2030. If we look at the kinds of policies countries already have in place, we will see a 3 times increase in production capacities. However, given the kind of demand that there will be, and also given the kind of price reductions that are occurring, this could be as high as 10 times. It will be somewhere in between, but this is where we are looking at the production capacities to be in the year 2030. Now, one of the things that is coming out, and we'll know more about in detail, my colleague Alexander Reuter is right here. He is leading a study where they're looking at not only at the price reductions and the price and the volumes that will come up, but also at components. This is true across the entire PV value chain. So for cells and modules, especially after 2030, we expect the growth to be there. But It also means that various other components, so for example, you're looking at glass, you're looking at frames, you're looking at inverters. In all of these areas, we see an explosion in manufacturing or in demand occurring, and therefore a need for manufacturing to ramp up as well. Now, the problem that we see is that, say that the prices of any of these things, whether it's panels or whether it's batteries or whether it's any of the other systems, say the price is here, say it's 100. When you set up a new plant, the price of these products is more, say 110. And therefore, why on earth would somebody put in facilities now? You need an incentive to pull the manufacturing into your geography. We have heard a great deal about the performance-linked incentives program. That's one picture of how instruments which at the same time promote, number one, setting up of manufacturing facilities. Number two, the constant increase in efficiency. You heard how the minister focused on efficiencies in the products that are provided under the performance-linked incentive program. We see something similar happening in the US, where the Inflation Reduction Act has also provided incentives in the form of tax credits to the industries that invest in the manufacture of solar panels and associated components in the years to come. We expect that by 2025 we will start seeing the impact of the growth in the manufacturing sector in India in the market, and by 2026, 2027 we will start seeing the impact of the manufacturing that is produced in the US market. This also implies, therefore, that we would also need to focus on the components. I'm delighted to have with us here the one manufacturer of glass who is possibly the largest manufacturer of PV glass in the world. They have specialized in this. If you're making PV cells, an essential component of it is the glass. And consequently, we need to make sure that the glass is available in adequate amounts with the small enough chains of supply chains for this to occur. So, in the years to come, there will be several things which will be important. One is, of course, manufacturing we will need more manufacturing, and clearly manufacturing will occur where the incentives are. It is also clear that for sustainable manufacturing to occur, we need to create an ecosystem within which better and better technologies are available. And therefore, both the PLI system and the Inflation Reduction Act, both of them focusing on the fact that tomorrow's technologies have to be better than today's technologies. You're looking at today's technologies which are the best in the market, tomorrow they are even better. This kind of build-in into the incentive system is important in order to build the research industry interface. In fact, then industries have a vested interest in either doing the R&D themselves or in developing relationships with leading R&D institutions, whether academic institutions or otherwise, so that cutting-edge technology is always entering the market. This will accelerate the process of getting more efficient technologies in. I will end here, but remain ready to be with you to answer any questions. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much once again, sir, for such a pertinent and compelling address. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, let me now take the privilege of inviting Dr. Martin Lukes, Head of Energy Team, KfW. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Thank you very much for inviting me. As a matter of fact, I'm very pleased to be here. As you might know, KfW Development Bank on behalf of the German government, has been supporting the energy sector in India for decades and has also strongly, or is strongly supporting energy transition in India with a multiple euro billion portfolio. We are working in transmission, we are working in distribution, we are strongly working in renewable energies and also in energy efficiency. Let me start my presentation with kind of a provocative question. Does green hydrogen really lead to acceleration of decarbonization? I want to have a look at this question from 2 points of view. First, from 4 points of view. First, why do I ask this question? There we have to look at the pathway of transformation in energy transition. And then there are 3 points how to answer this question. One is, what are the drivers of change? The second is, what are the general principles for green hydrogen production for international support? And last but not least, market regulation versus market distortion. How do we act here? Let me start with asking or answering you, why do I ask this question of does it really lead to acceleration of the decarbonization? When we look at the pathway of transformation in energy transition, first we have to do decarbonization of power supply. That's where renewables really come into the game. Then we come to electrification of economy. And the last part is decarbonization of the hard-to-abate sectors. That is the general pathway that we always follow. And that means, first of all, we have to supercharge renewable energy. This is a must. When we look at climate Paris Agreement, we see that almost all economies are lagging behind to their fair shares that they should contribute in order to become carbon neutral. Green hydrogen is basically only the last mile of energy transition. So here we have to put it into the context. But still, if we use this enthusiasm that exists in green hydrogen, we can really use it also as a leverage for political change and for really promoting decarbonization. Now, my first answer to this question is drivers of change. We have been discussing technologies and markets in the previous discussions, and these are exactly the drivers of change, technologies and markets. When we look at emerging markets and we look at the main actors in these emerging markets, there's a typical early mover trade-off. We have the off-taker risk. All of these have been addressed already in previous presentations. For this, we need a strong and sustainable and reliable regulatory framework. We need subsidy schemes, and last but not least, by doing this, we need demand promotion. If we do this properly, we will be able to contribute to the system in a way that also green hydrogen production would lead to acceleration of decarbonization. The second point, what are the general points, general principles for green hydrogen production when it comes to international support? We have to contribute to decarbonization with all what we are doing. The activities that we as international finance support should be part of a national strategy, which would be here the case in India. We have to prove additionality of renewable energy. That means timely and also regionally. We have to make sure that climate efficiency is maintained, and that we support the creation of local value chains. Last but not least, we have to make sure that no negative environmental and social impact is created. If we do all this properly, we support to sustainable change and sustainable energy transition. One last point when it comes especially to Aatmanirbhar Bharat. Market regulation versus market distortion. I think self-reliance is a must, and I think under these circumstances of kind of crisis, everybody is repeating this. But intervention should not distort markets and should not impede international competition. It should rather incentive market regulation in a way that it supports, as I keep calling it, QRS. Quality, reliability, and sustainability. So when we do incentive schemes, be it here in India or be it in other parts of the world, we have to make sure that it really not impedes competition, rather creates a competition in a way that it really conduces to sustainable change. Here I finalize and I might conclude GH2, green hydrogen, is rather a keystone of decarbonization and energy transition than an accelerator. But if used wisely, green hydrogen can contribute sustainably and substantially to acceleration of decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lukes, once again. And with that, I thank the eminent panelists for enlightening us with some very key and very important observations. Thank you very much. Please to give us a group photo opportunity. And post that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be breaking for lunch. I will request and urge all of you to please come back to this room by 2:45 p.m. because 2:45 p.m. sharp is when we will be a part of the session on making India a global manufacturing hub in RE with Mr. Piyush Goyal, Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry, Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution and Textiles, Government of India. I would also like to apprise all of you, inform all of you, ladies and gentlemen, that lunch is at the hard court area, which is also called the hangar, which is at the basement of this hotel, closer to the convention hall. So hard court or the hangar, close to the convention hall. The basement of this hotel is where lunch is organized for all of you. May I request you to please come back at 2:45 p.m. sharp, ladies and gentlemen. The next session is going to be completely unmissable, so please make sure you're back by 2:45 p.m. Thank you very much.